of African nations that over 3 billion people are in the blink of falling into distress and in need of global intervention. Now, Head of Public Service Felix Koskei has raised his concerns over wastage in the public service and glaring misuse of public funds by government officials. During a meeting with all principal secretaries and chairs of departments, Koskei ordered for immediate stoppage of unjustified foreign or domestic travels and directed all government officers to hold their retreats within the capital, Nairobi. All finance directors in all ministries have also been directed to revise their annual budgets and present the budget cuts for reallocation. Koskei cited meetings away from offices and in luxurious hotels as one of the avenues of wastage. And members of the Budget and Appropriations Committee have criticized a supplementary budget request by various ministries, departments and state agencies, saying they were abusing the constitutional provisions and defying the budget-making cycle. This is after a report of the Controller of Budget revealed that 18 MDAs had written to the National Treasury requesting funds for various projects amounting to 15.27 billion shillings, barely 2 months since the approval of the annual budget estimates. Some of the requests included a 400 million shillings request by the Office of the State Comptroller to purchase motor vehicles. And a Nairobi court has ruled that former Kiambu Governor Ferdinand Waititu, his wife Susan Wangari and 11 others have a case to answer over the irregular awarding of 588 million shillings wrong tender in Kiambu County in February 2018. While issuing the verdict, Malibani Chief Magistrate Thomas Nzioki noted that the prosecution had presented sufficient evidence, including 32 witnesses and 741 exhibits, to substantiate the accusations leveled against Waititu and his assumed accomplices. The former governor and the co-accused persons are facing 11 counts, including 1 count of conflict of interest, 3 counts of dealing with suspect property, 1 count of abuse of office, and 1 count of willful failure to comply with laws relating to procurement. And the Directorate of Criminal Investigations has released images of a woman believed to have been involved in a brutal murder of Nairobi Hospital Acting Finance Director Eric Maigo, who was stabbed 25 times in the morning of Friday, September 15, 2023. In the images captured on CCTV cameras, the unidentified woman is seen attempting to escape from the victim's residence at Woodley Annex Upper by scaling through the perimeter wall. According to DCI, investigations have established that the woman left the house through the back door and after the cold blood murder. The DCI is now urging you to volunteer any information that would help in identifying the suspect. And 3 people were killed and 3 others were left nursing gunshot wounds in Morijo area of Samburu North in Samburu County only hours before the National Cohesion and Integration Commission held the national celebrations of the International Day of Peace in the area. NCIC and local leaders condemned the attack and called on the youth to abandon cattle rustling and seek alternative revenue streams. Local leaders, on their part, committed to preach and maintain peace among the warring communities. NCIC is also calling on leaders to support legislative efforts aimed at taming incitement to prevent banditry attacks even before they happen. And a contingent of police officers from Nyeri and Kenya Revenue Authority officials have seized 790 cartons of second-generation alcoholic drinks affixed with fake KRA stamps. According to a statement by the National Police Service, the detectives who were acting on a tip-off from the public raided the premises in Nyeri town and confiscated 740 cartons branded as Sweetberry vodka and another 50 cartons of Dallas vodka. The Thursday operation also saw 1 person arrested and charged. Now, a Rwandan man pleaded guilty to killing 14 people after the discovery of a pile of bodies buried in a hole in his kitchen. Dennis Kazungu, 34-year-old, was indicted with multiple charges including murder, rape, forgery, impersonation, desecration of human corpses. At a packed court hearing in Kigali, Kazungu said yes when asked by the judge if the prosecution allegations against him were correct. This is what he said. "Those who I killed had infected me with HIV," said Kazungu, who brought to the hearing by police in handcuffs that was later removed. Kazungu was detained earlier this month after police discovered 12 bodies, most of them women, in a hole in the kitchen of his rented home in Kigali suburb where he lived alone. I'm Dennis Asada. Good morning.
102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
The following takes place from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every weekday on Spice FM.
You tune into Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Ramanya.
Amen. Amen.
So 1 hour is over?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It gets over
Can you imagine
in 20 minutes.
what the big boys have also done?
I'm very proud of myself. When you understand about partnership in politics, it's like the way marriage is these days. When you're looking for a wife, you're like, oh, you know, maybe you can help me pay for fees as I pay for the rent.
Why should you have a lioness living in your bedroom?
I have to tell you a story. I went for a prayer meeting, which was called for the spouses of candidates for senators and governors. And when I got to the gate, the lady who was the secretary, she refused to. She's telling me, no. Leo tunataka wa mama. Leo ni wa mama. I'm telling her, no. She said, no, sio siku yenu. And I thought, there's a problem here, you know, because if it was a man, but this was a lady.
It will be called First Ladies until you change the name.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you very much, Eric, and it's good to be at the Situation Room.
Always a pleasure coming here. This is the most challenging interview panel in Kenya. You guys are very well informed, and as you can see, Charles today, very philosophical.
To be poor in this country is the greatest sin you can commit, not just from a legal perspective, but from life generally. It is very, very skewed.
We've just heard on the floor of Parliament, just most recently, a leader within the ODM saying that Sisi ni ng'ombe is a baba.
Yeah.
Which means that you are willing to be milked dry. Hapo.
You cannot force me to believe. I'll give way. If it's land that I'm told to return to you, I will. Okay? Because the court has said so. But I'll continue saying, watu wamenirusha. That's all that I'm doing.
The Situation Room.
If you go out of this country and come back the same person, then you have a problem. Buy land, 1 million. Put it there for 5 years. What's the purpose?
It'll have increased in value.
No, that's the thing. That's darkness. You know, that's an eclipse. You don't do that.
I hope you don't believe that a hustler is a poor person or that all hustlers are poor. I've seen that conversation.
Tell us, who is a hustler?
Who's a hustler?
Hustler is a person who is making a living through hard work.
Corruption in Kenya is a political accusation. The people who are actually corrupt are not pointed fingers at.
Kenya is not free. Kenya imeshikwa na mateka. It's under siege.
Have you seen that lodge on Nyeri Road? Very high fence. You can't even
Windows
sleep inside.
up near the ceiling.
Yes. And if you walk that midnight, you see bats the size of cows.
And when it rains, it doesn't rain on that building.
Yes.
When you're at All Saints and it's raining, it doesn't rain on that building.
The things people will believe.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
It's Friday, and there might be a little bit of traffic here and there because there's also rain here and there. But let's see how Friday morning opens up. There's really not much in terms of traffic. We're going to see a build-up on the Thika Superhighway. A little of that coming in and out as you get then towards Pangani at the underpass. Also, let's see, coming out of Westlands, not much going on here. Langata Road is busy already. We're seeing movement coming off of Magadi Road, past Multimedia University, out then towards Langata Road, and it's going to steep all over then towards the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. Still slim pickings. It's still dark out. And a chance of rain this morning, we're told, might slow things down. So as we're opening up Friday, let's know what's going on where you are, just in case you slam into something. Well, run into something better. Spice FM KE on X. Want to keep things moving this Friday and make it a good one, folks. Let's do it.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room.
Indeed,
the only way to start your
morning. Heavy rains yesterday in some parts of the country, and then looking forward to getting past the week. It's the last day of the week. It's Friday. It's finally here. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. How are you doing? It's 11 minutes after 6 o'clock, and Kenya's biggest conversation starts now. It's the 22nd of September, and about a week left into the final quarter of the year. And here we are saying, it's been a ride, hasn't it just? Hey, City, good morning.
Good morning, Ndu.
How are you?
Fine, thank you, Ndu.
Okay. How many times can you say my name in 30 seconds?
Okay. How many times? How many times do you want me to say it?
No, not like that. Like, with every other thing you say comes...
Well, Ndu, thank you so much. It's a wonderful morning, Ndu.
Okay, yes, it is.
Yes.
How was your day, CT?
My day has been very good, Ndu.
No, the day so far. I'm asking about yesterday.
Yesterday, which is today.
No, yesterday, which is the day before today. Okay,
it's
you're waving
good.
At people.
No, I'm waving at our guest host.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
She's coming?
She has come.
Don't worry.
Talk to Ednah.
Ednah will do like that. Don't worry. I'm
very well. Mm-hmm. Yes, this morning where I get my papers, there's a young lady who asked me, told me, is this El Nino really coming?
It's here, man.
I told her it's here. She asked me, it's here. I said, yes. So I conducted a little tutorial to explain what it is and how it is waiting. I said, oh, so that's what it is.
You were teaching people geography.
So I asked her, what did you think it was? Said, to be honest, I've never really given it thought. I said, do not worry. We're all like that at some point.
That's interesting. When we hear this El Nino thing, this phenomenon, people think that it's a guest coming to Kenya. It's going to be around for some time.
Or is a soccer star.
There's a concert happening.
Yes. Weather.
Mvua itanyesha.
Mvua ye inakuja Kenya.
Mvua ye inakuja Kenya ambayo inaitwa El Nino. That's what it is. Okay, we're getting into Friday morning. Everybody, good morning and karibu sana to Kenya's biggest conversation, and we will be having some of those this morning. It's a healthy Friday conversation that we'll be having with a lady. There'll be another Ednah here, and she is a psychologist with Mine. She'll be talking about suicide prevention, and it's a mental health conversation, and it will be very important for us to look at that because quite a number of those have popped up onto our radar once again. And when it comes to the mental health status in this country, suicide seems to be a route that quite a number of people are taking, or at least at some point have attempted. So suicide awareness and prevention will be our topic at 7 a.m. and Ednah Chawia will be our guest at that hour. She is a consultant psychologist. All right. So politically, there seem to be some rumblings here and there. The Secretary General of the Jubilee Party will be with us here at 8 o'clock. Jeremiah Kioni is talking to us about the Kamwene leadership. You've heard about Kamwene? They're saying things and they're doing.
It was unveiled the other day.
Yes, it was. And so people are not very satisfied. Maybe people are looking for other outlets to then be able to display their political intentions here and there. We'll be talking with him at 8, and he'll give us insights into what this all means with the new leadership angle vis-a-vis the bipartisan talks that are currently going on with Azimio and the government. All right. Michael Mlina is the Deputy Executive Director of UN Habitat. He'll be with us here at 9 o'clock, and we'll be talking about why we must prioritize sustainable urban development. Urban poverty has been a thing. It continues to be a thing. And the assumption previously has been that rural poverty is the only thing that's important, but we've seen that the levels of urban poverty over time have risen. Levels of urban development are not as we would like them to be. And so why is it important that urban development is prioritized amongst in government, in country? We'll be having that conversation at 9 o'clock. It's a packed Friday and we're getting into it. Let's take a break at right about now and take a look at what's going on with the weather. Yes, we're expecting heavy rains this weekend across the country, and then going into the next couple of weeks with this visitor called El Nino. So let's take a look at what it's going to look like this Friday and how you can plan for that. And we'll be back and say hello to you and everybody else who's joined us this morning. It's 16 minutes after 6.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
All right, looking at rainy conditions, parts of Nairobi this morning, and we are at 16 degrees, highs of 25 and lows of 14. It's clear at 13 in Nakuru, highs of 25 and lows of 13, and mostly cloudy conditions at 16 in Nyeri, with highs of 25. We'll see lows of 15. In Eldoret, it's clear at 12, highs of 24, and looking into Mombasa, it's mostly clear at 24 with highs of 30. We'll see lows of 24, 25, and partly cloudy conditions in Malindi, highs of 30. And at 18, it's clear in Kisumu with highs of 29. We'll see lows of 18. Clear at 17 in Kakamega, highs of 20 and lows of 15. And looking into a cloudy Kampala at 18, highs of 28, back down to lows of 18. It's cloudy at 24 in Dar es Salaam with highs of 30 and lows of 23. Mostly clear in Johannesburg at 14 with highs of 28. It'll come back down to lows of 14. It's mostly cloudy at 26 in Lagos with highs of 30. And we'll see highs of 32 in a partly cloudy Kinshasa at 24. Sunny conditions Friday afternoon in Beijing at 25. We'll go to highs of 28. It's cloudy at 12 in Paris with temperatures cooling generally, highs of 17. And at 11 degrees, London is cloudy, going to highs of 19. Thursday night is clear at 16 in New York. Coming into Friday, highs of 24 and lows of 14.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Hello to everybody. Our guest host for the show is here, architect Sylvia Kasanga. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you guys?
We're fine.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here again.
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, I can see.
Niliamka usiku wa manane leo. Yes, I'm happy to be here.
And there's a good reason why?
Yes, of course. Always wonderful to join in to have a good conversation. I'm really looking forward to it.
It's different now because now you're helping us steer these conversations today.
Yes.
Oh, it's good to have you here.
Thank you.
And we're used to calling you Senator Sylvia Kasanga. Now we're calling you architect Sylvia Kasanga. It's interesting because nobody really knew, your other side of profession.
Yes. And I have to keep reminding people that I am not. I'm not in Parliament at the moment, and I'm also not a doctor because sometimes I get confused when I speak mental health issues. So it's good we emphasize today that I'm in the construction space.
Indeed.
Yes.
Well, then also we're having a mental health issue conversation at 7 o'clock when we're looking at suicide prevention and all these things. So it's still interesting for you to cross over those waters every now and then.
Yes.
So there are people online. Everybody greets us very early. And Ricardo, of course, says, good morning. This morning tuned in from Kitengela. Okay, Don Sabwa with our normal Malawi teachings this morning, rather the language from Malawi. Good morning. Mwaka Bwanji CT and Ndu reply is Ndakuzuka Bueno. A consultant we say Ozindikila. Kenyans will have a US Ozindikila on spiritual matters. Have a nice weekend. Kalini ndi weekendi ya Bueno. Spiritual consultant is coming to Kenya. So Don has said so many things in that statement, but we hear you and we hear all of them. Mike Waiguru says, good morning, Lakewood, Washington State. There's no other way to finish my day than tuning into the Situation Room. Well, good morning to you. The Duke of Boisanga is here. Says, bonjour, Kenya. Ekaro. Madam Ndu and Siti Muga. Yes, good morning to you. listening from Kansas in the US. Good morning. John Kangu says, good morning. Great people tuned in from Machakos. Kambas call it Masaku. Machakos is called Masaku? Masaku. Okay, thank you.
There's an intonation there. The sound has to play. Masaku. Yes.
Okay. So then English came and bastardized it and called it Machakos.
As always.
Titi.
Yes.
Okay, Sawa. Don't worry. Just be happy. Okay. I've been called Her Excellency. I'll take it. You are still forgetting acronyms. Which acronyms did you want us to say again? Okay, be specific, Deep State. Which acronyms did we miss out on? Which ones are you looking for? How would you like us to open those out? Agri Momanye says good morning and he's tuned in bright and early. Carol Nyambura says good morning, everybody. Good morning to you. Mogere Nelson, good morning, Wagwana. Good morning to you. Ahmed says also he's here in the house. It's the weekend, guys. I look forward to 6 a.m. every morning to listen to you. The greatest morning company. Keep it up. Thank you very much, Jacinta. We see you. Desmond is also here and says good morning. Hey, CT. Yes. This man, CT, was born handsome and he's still handsoming his shirt. It's cool. Hey. Excuse me. CT, stop being shy. This is very interesting to see.
I'm not.
People can look at your face and you're hiding under the cap. They have told you that you were born handsome and you're still handsoming. You understand? Have you seen?
As long as you keep speaking in English, I will understand.
They said you're born handsome. This one I'll never forget. Anthony Onyango says good morning. Good morning, Team Spice, says Leshan. Jackson Moduri says good morning. Watching from Meru, my home county. Well, good morning to you. Samantha's tuned in this morning. Joe Mongai is here. And Joseph Mbehe says good morning as well. Job Otieno, Jimmy Wekesa, Super Soul Child says good morning. Dr. Venvik is tuned in from Mombasa, Tudor specifically. So good to have all of you in this morning as we get into it. Karibuni sana. Okay, our proverb from Malawi as you toss us some newspapers, CT.
Well, this is the final proverb from Malawi. Or do you want the newspapers first?
Can you do two things at once?
Yes,
can you walk and chew gum?
I can.
Let's go.
Okay. Which paper do you want?
I want you to give Architect the Standard.
Which
and
paper
I'll
would
take
you
the
like?
Nation.
Whichever. I am open.
Okay, then I'll give you the Nairobian.
Okay, not the Nairobi.
Wow.
Okay. I thought that would elicit that sort of reaction.
Voila.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur.
So I remain with
those ones.
Nairobian. Okay. This proverb, I left it for today because I found it particularly interesting. In fact, to the point of being hilarious. An upstart is a sparrow trying to marry a hornbill. Sparrow, small bird. Hornbill, big bird. In fact, the beak of the hornbill is bigger than the bird itself. In fact, there are those who argue it's even bigger than the bird itself. Because the hornbill has a very
big
beak.
Hornbill.
Big
horn.
Yes.
Bill.
So that's the definition of an upstart according to the Malawians.
You can be what? You can be ambitious.
Well, that's ambition for you.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Dreams are valid.
Oh, very valid. Oh, very, very valid. Very valid. In fact, that's the beauty of dreams. There are no limits.
Yeah.
There are no boundaries. You can dream as you see fit.
Yeah.
Now, where matters become thick is when you're now trying to put them into operation. As you say, operationalize them. Then you suddenly discover it is one thing to have a dream. It's quite another to actually get it to work for you. Yes.
And here I am thinking, what happens if you actually do cross two birds? If two birds mated and then one laid an egg, would it, like, you know how you can cross a horse with a zebra and then you get a striped horse? Would you get a sparrow with a huge bill?
The imagination goes wild.
I'm telling you, that's where I went. Yeah, that's where I went. Okay. All right. Sawa. It's good your dreams are valid, CT. All right. Let's take a look at the headlines and see what's happening this morning. I will look at some and then we look at those stories in detail. On the front page of the Standard this morning, Ruto, Raila caught in succession fight. Okay, that seems to be the headline. One that is very interesting is that Koskei says to civil servants, he's the head of public service, and he said, you know what? Go on leave and stop deals. Head of Public Service Felix Koskei says some public servants are deliberately not going on leave to maintain their corruption networks in government. Okay. Coastal leaders are saying to President William Ruto, do anything, but not our ports. Essentially, do not touch. Also, El Nino. Auditor, country is ill prepared for flooding disaster. With El Nino rains booming, a report by the Auditor General shows the disaster response system is fraught with inadequacies. Surprise, surprise. On the front page of The Nation, talk teams in near fisticuffs. The question is a stormy session, and the ongoing negotiations between President William Ruto and opposition leader Raila Odinga to resolve the 2022 post-election crisis yesterday degenerated into a shouting match, which almost broke into a fist fight amid a major split between the warring camps. Why can't we all just get along? TSC rejects proposals on education reforms. The Teacher Service Commission boss Nancy Macharia tells MPs their views to the Presidential Working Party on education were neither considered nor acknowledged in the final report, and she feels that they ought to have been. It will be interesting to see what happens as a result of that. Westgate Mall marks its 10th anniversary of the terrorist attack, and why NHIF workers may have to reapply for their jobs. Omo. Okay. So we'll be looking at those stories in details. What do you have on the headlines?
Yeah, today looks very interesting. I have a boost for banks as car buyers flock to auction yards. That Kenyans, put off by a sharp rise in car import prices due to severe weakening shilling, are flocking to bank auction yards for cheaper units repossessed from loan defaulters, handing a boost to the lenders, hoping to recoup their debt. Tough times.
Tell you.
There's an interesting one here that Kenya's fuel prices, 12th highest in Africa. That Kenya now has the 12th costliest fuel in Africa, following the recent price review that increased pump charges up by 21.32 shillings per litre. Oh, there's a very good one here. Budget chief wants tighter emergency loans leash. All emergency loans tapped by the Treasury from the Central Bank of Kenya will be fully repaid within a financial year to curb a pile-up of public debt if Parliament approves proposals by the Controller of Budget.
All right.
Interesting.
Very
interesting.
We'll look at those in detail. CT, tell us what you have.
Well, in the Star, top right-hand corner, in burnt, well, this isn't burnt red, this is just brown. Okay. Siasa on page 2 and 3. Nairobi among 3 counties exposed for potential fraud. Potential. Not accurate. Potential. Matters fraud in this country. When you hear potential, please just remove the word potential and say real.
Where there's smoke.
This one, there's fire first.
Where there's smoke, they've already burned down the building.
Where there's fire, the smoke will follow. Not where there's smoke, there's fire. There's fire, okay?
Sheesh.
Right. Family of Kenyan killed by police in the US to get a 25 million shillings. The guy called Irvo Tien 28, who had a bipolar condition.
Yeah.
Yes, while in prison, he was manhandled. Police pinned him down. And as a result of that, he was killed. So the family is set to be compensated the tune of $8.5 million. Won't bring him back, though.
It won't bring him back, unfortunately.
Yes. Now, there is a story about, again, a young man by the name of Moses Mosetti. Okay? This is in Kenya. Why was our son killed in jail? Family members seek answers. The last-born son, who was remanded at GK prison, panicking and fearful, their response was to dash to Nairobi prison to check on the 34-year-old man. prisons and deaths. Remember, we've had cases where we're told someone died at a police cell and they hanged themselves.
Yeah.
Now, police cells, you're not alone in the cell. Just understand. It's not as though it's some solitary. There are many of you in the same cell.
Yeah.
Yes. So how this one person managed to hang himself, this is not the case. I'm making reference to an earlier cases where someone died in prison and were told they hanged themselves. When a post-mortem was done, very many injuries were found in the body. So you wonder, when you hang yourself, it's the neck that usually is the point of focus.
Usually.
Yes, but if there's damage on your forehead, on your chest, so are we saying that this hanging travels to the rest of your body? Okay. Okay.
We get where you're going.
Health ministries and counties partner in El Nino response. Well, the Ministry of Health says it's working to try and see how they can mitigate against what definitely is on its way. And the warning signs are already here with us. Okay? Pressure to fire. That's headline in bold black. Ruto to face UDA top brass. NGC to meet next week amidst push for president to overhaul his executive.
Okay.
All right.
That'll be interesting.
No, I would say the headline is interesting.
Yes. In terms of what's actually going on.
Yes.
It's an interesting headline. Whether that is actually what is going to happen, totally different story.
Yes.
On that note, let's take a break. Look at traffic quickly and come and look at the meat and flesh of these stories. It's 29 minutes to 7 o'clock. Coming back and continuing with what's really making the stories under the headlines. We'll be back in a minute.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It's critical that people pay taxes. But then taxation has to have a limit. When you start overtaxing people beyond certain limit, then this is now we call robbery with violence.
We are all struggling, but we don't show. If you're not doing well, shame on you. But you have to say, I'm broke and I'm struggling. We are not okay until everybody is okay.
We are pretending to have political parties. Why don't we just be honest? And we say, these are the Luyas, these are the Kambas, these are the Kikuyus, and we find ourselves in Kenya.
You know, with politics and leadership, no matter what you do, there will always be a complaint. There will always be the assumption that you're either stealing or you're not doing things right. As a leader, don't fear. If you know you're doing the right thing, you've thought about it, you've got an expert advice, do it, then understand later.
This country, we don't need prayers. Prayers is between you and God. Good governance and thinkers who care about the country and not their stomach.
That's what we need.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Okay, the most of what we'll see right about now, coming closer to 7 o'clock, is that traffic is going to be busy on the Thika Superhighway, getting just towards that Pangani underpass and the Muthaiga Square junction. That's about the most of it. Jogo Road looks slightly busy as you're trying to get towards Landis and then out towards Kamkunji at the roundabout. We'll see some movement on the Uhuru Highway getting out towards Haile Selassie. And if we're looking at the CBD, that's where most of it is coming in from. We're going to see some movement right around Cabanas going towards North Airport Road and the Eastern Bypass Junction. But apart from that, it looks like we're doing all right this Friday morning. Either folks have not quite left to go where they're going, or, people have already reached their destination. We're likely to see some outbound traffic of the city this morning as well. We're going to keep an eye on it and see how it opens up closer to traffic hour. Talk to us on Spice FM, KE on X.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
26 minutes to 7 o'clock, looking at what is happening beneath those stories. All right. The chief, I want to call him chief, but let me just call him the head of public service, as is his job, has called on civil servants to go on leave and stop the deals. Now, I don't know which part of that headline you want to look at properly. go on leave and stop deals. So there are two things that are happening here. People are hanging around the office, not necessarily because they love their jobs to death, but there are other things that they can be doing which is going to give them some kind of monetary benefits. All right. Now, Felix Koskei says that's not going to happen anymore. And he says those who have accumulated many pending leave days have been directed to exhaust them. The head of public service and chief of staff, Felix Koskei, said some government employees have been cunningly avoiding going on leave to cut deals in public offices on days they are supposed to rest. He said it had been established that it is giving room for corruption in public office. Why would someone have 200 leave days and not take them? If you tell that person to go on leave, they will go for 2 years, others for 6 months, and even up to 4 months, as in that's how much in terms of leave days that they have accumulated. Why are you sticking in that office? Even senior people in government, including the head of state, go on leave. What is it that you don't want to happen in your office, he's asking. Koskei was addressing chief executive officers from state corporations, their chairman and head of audits from several parastatals yesterday. He revealed that civil servants refuse to take a break, claim that there is nobody else to take over the department and that there is too much work. Annual leave is mandatory, he says. You need to rest. Each and every officer with accumulated leave days has to take them from today. Let us attempt to be professionals. He said the days will not be paid. So don't think that you'll accumulate them and we'll give you money later. No. The policy of the government is that you can only carry forward half of your leave days in a year. From this financial year, it is only 15 days that can be carried forward. For those who accumulated leave days, that they can be converted into cash, thinking that they can be converted into cash, Koskei said the government will not honor that. And he says it's a breeding ground for corruption. You want to make sure that your deals are still being cooked. He says it's not happening anymore. Tafa Valley, take your leave and go home. Tawa. That's what's happening there. Senator, what story do you have? I want to call you an architect, sorry.
I didn't even hear you call my name.
Okay.
Mint youth entrepreneurs to tame biting joblessness. Waive business registration and licensing costs and register budding entrepreneurs at all Huduma centers. This is an article in this Business Daily, and I think it is so pertinent after what we saw earlier this week with the registrations at KDF. It is projected that by 2030 the number of youth will rise by 7% to almost 1.3 billion. Africa, that is touted as a continent of the youth, will have more than 500 million people aged between 15 and 35 years. They are touted as the future of the world economy, and increasing their capabilities, guiding them to play their rightful role in an ever-evolving world has become a constant topic. The youth face, a number of barriers to business creation and self-employment, hence the growing emphasis to empower them through entrepreneurship, coaching, training, startup financing, and business incubation programs. The UN has it that worldwide, 30% of young women and 13% of young men are not engaged in employment, education, or training. And estimates suggest that 95% of all young workers are part of informal economy in developing countries. Now, UNICEF says that across Kenya, 85% of unemployed people are younger than 35. I think
85% are younger than 35,
yes. And I think we saw that earlier this week. Yeah, and it says that it's an alarming rate, exacerbated by a growing population and a labor force, a skills mismatch, declining economic growth, and skewed labor market setups. Interesting.
Quite.
Interesting indeed. That's a serious conversation that needs to continue happening. And in fact, I was thinking to myself, when we saw the hordes of young people lining up at KDF, and that is at national level. Remember, they start their recruitment at the counties, and you saw the numbers that came out on Monday. And I said in another platform that indeed we have a time bomb.
There's a problem.
If this is the number of young people.
And mind you, all of those had qualified.
Yeah, they had all qualified. They had to up the bar on that day so that they can,
to get, at least to reduce the number.
Yeah, to reduce the numbers.
Yeah. So imagine those have not qualified, those not qualified but still seeking employment.
Yes.
The place would have been, it would have exploded.
It would have exploded.
Yeah.
It's really crazy.
But the problem there, it has nothing to do with employment, rather than, in my opinion, an education system that focuses on training people to look for jobs as opposed to one that trains people to create jobs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, the CBC, in theory, ought to do that. And we said this in the course of the week, that the example that I know of, the other examples, but I focus on this one because it works, is a country called Estonia. Their curriculum does precisely that. So you have this strange phenomenon, that, at least it is strange for us Kenyans, where in Estonia there are more jobs than there are people who can work. And the reason is because people leave school with the idea that they can create something. When I say the idea, part of how you graduate is you must have an enterprise that you've researched on and you put into practice. So as you're leaving school, not university, school, this is something you can actually do.
Yeah.
Now imagine if you take that idea onto university level. By the time you leave, it's something that can actually be done because you're being helped to ensure that it actually works.
Exactly.
Now, the argument has been, it's a country with a small population. I said, that is perfect because then, if it can work with a small population, then indeed it ought to be able to work with a much larger population.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
City.
You know the story I mentioned earlier on about a man who died in our hospital, in our prisons, okay? This gentleman was named Joseph Museti. You wouldn't guess how he ended up in prison. He ended up in prison because his father took him there. Yeah, he had destroyed his father's property, which amounted to 13,000 shillings. The father took him just to teach him a little lesson. Said, he was charged with malicious damage of property and he was due for trial on September the 20th, okay? Now, he was the last born of the family. Nobody would have foreseen that something of that sort, which involved, let me explain what he did. He destroyed the cowshed and sold some of the materials from the cowshed. That's what he did.
Okay. So then his father took him to prison.
His father said, this is nonsense.
Okay.
Yes. Now, who would have thought that something of this sort would end up in the young man dying?
What happened?
According to the story and according to what the police, it was apparent that he was sick. Now, his sister rushed to the GK prison and was informed that he wasn't there. He had been taken to hospital. There are those who said he died in the waiting area. Apparently, he fell ill and was foaming at the mouth. But upon further investigation, it was found that he died of asphyxia. So essentially, the man was
strangled.
Yes.
Yeah.
So.
My goodness.
In this life, one hears of very many shocking stories. But I think here you have a father who I think must be grieving because he did not intend for his son to die.
No, he didn't. He wanted to teach him a lesson. That was clear. And at least make him pay for his irresponsibility. But then you can imagine now what he's going to do in terms of blaming himself to ask that had he not taken him there, maybe this would not have happened. Well, that's true. It's true.
Yeah, it is true.
It's very true that had he not taken him there, he would not have died of strangulation. He would not have died in prison if his father had not taken him there.
Yes.
All right? But can he be truly completely to blame for what happened here?
No. The details of what actually happened blow by blow isn't provided for.
Yeah.
It's just snippets of, well, if this, well, that, well, the other. But I'm sure if these matters are investigated, we'll get to know more. But what is also clear is that the prison authorities, according to this article, have remained tight-lipped on the subject. They are not speaking.
They're not speaking. Well, it'll be interesting to hear, as normally is the case. How many times do we find that there's an offering of information when somebody dies in a cell or somebody dies at the hands of police? Do you ever find them coming out and saying the next morning, well, here are the events blow by blow of what happened?
No,
it is not something that you will see regularly. They would not. So they remain tight-lipped. And here's a story of somebody else who normally remains tight-lipped, but she's coming out saying, you know what, guys, in this case, they didn't ask us. And that's the boss of the TSC, Nancy Macharia. And she says that we actually, according to the headline, the TSC is rejecting proposals on education reforms. Now, Nancy Macharia was before Parliament, and what we are getting from this article is that the TSC has rejected some of the recommendations made by the Presidential Working Party on education reforms, saying its proposals were not considered. by the TSC. Its proposals as the TSC were not considered by the Presidential Working Party. Addressing members of the National Assembly Departmental Committee on Education, chairing during public hearings in Kilifi County yesterday, the TSC boss Nancy Macharia said their views to the task force, that is chaired by Professor Raphael Munavu, were neither considered nor acknowledged in their final report. Ms. Macharia said that the party report, which will be implemented once it's ratified by the National Assembly, puts them at odds with the Ministry of Education, and that the Constitution also it also interferes with their mandate. The teachers' employer cited the recommendation that TSC officials should seek permission from the Ministry of Health before going to schools. All right. The task force recommended that the MOE be mandated to develop guidelines on how all teachers who graduated before 2023 will undergo a mandatory 1-year retooling and upgrading program to comply with the curriculum change. Macharia said the responsibility to develop the guidelines and enforce the recommendations that only teachers who have undergone the mandatory retooling should be allowed to teach in all basic institutions had been wrongly given to the ministry without reference to the ongoing retooling by the TSC. So, I mean, it goes, but the crux of the matter here is that there is a lot of responsibility that is now being given to the Ministry of Education, which the TSC feels should remain under their ambit. And they're saying, well, look, we've made recommendations. These things, we're already doing them. So we made recommendations to the Working Party that we just continue with what we've been doing. We understand that there needs to be a retooling or recalibration, especially because we are looking at a new curriculum. So why don't you just allow us to continue to do the things that we've done? That you are now reducing our stretch and our reach as a Teacher Service Commission, and you're taking all of these things to the ministry. How about you just allow us to continue? Because who knows better the teachers than the commission? So they're saying that there are certain things that are in this report that they are rejecting because their views were not recognized. And it will be interesting to see how they will be able to work with that, because once it's ratified, it's ratified. Mm-hmm. And they will follow on with the action that they have put in the proposals. But the TSC, they are not happy campers right about now about
Of course, because they are a key stakeholder. You'd imagine that they're amongst the first ones who are consulted over such, whether their recommendations are adopted or not, at least they've been given an year, and that's important. I think that's what we call real public participation, where you make sure the key stakeholders have given their views, and their recommendations. And there's always a positive. Even if it's a recommendation you won't take wholly, there may be something then you may adjust in some of, the decisions that you're trying to make, or in the path or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve in the end. Because many times you'll also find that, there's a clear goal you want to reach there. But how to get there is the issue. But it's important to incorporate, as many people's views as possible, and especially key stakeholders who get affected first.
It'll be interesting to see what they do with that.
Yeah. So let me just bring to the attention, because now built industry. We are actually mourning one of our greatest losses in the built industry. And this is a construction company called Lakshman Bai. And the founder passed away. The company was founded in 1953 and is arguably the one contractor who's built the best buildings that you can think of in the country here. Yeah, with extremely high standards of quality and everything else. In fact, we've been mourning him. I have a group of architects we've come together called the Architects Alliance, and he was really eulogized very well last night, because they say of all the contractors, most of the ones we have worked with, this particular one, his attention to detail was impeccable. And we have this conversation about buildings that are collapsing.
Yes.
What is the role then of the consultants? What is the role of the contractor? Now, this is a contractor who I can tell you will not go to site unless he has full documentation, full everything. And it makes a very big difference. By the time he's starting to dig the ground, he has absolutely all the information that he needs to perform well as a contractor. So we are mourning a great loss in the built industry today.
What are some of the landmark developments that he's been involved in? Do you have an idea?
Including Villa Rosa Kapinski. In fact, they're listed here. Hemingway's Hotel in Karen, Lonro House, Sarova Stanley, the UN Complex in Gigiri, English Point Marina in Mombasa, Teleposta Towers. This is somebody who's been there since 1950.
And the list goes on.
And the list goes on and on and on. Mentored a lot of people, of course, a lot of accolades and awards. But really, he set the bar It's a bar that many contractors are not able to reach.
But it explains why it is that people chose him.
Yeah.
Or decided on him when they had these very serious signature projects.
Exactly.
They knew that he would deliver on what they wanted. Yes.
Yeah, they're getting the best. Absolutely.
Not some of these contractors where you end up with a window on the roof and you're wondering what the window is doing on the roof.
Yeah.
Yes.
In fact, these are some of the conversations we will need to probably dig into. You know, how our contractors, how are they trained? How is it that they get where they get? You know, what are their qualifications? How do they run the companies that they run? You know, and the consultants as well. We need to dig in and find out what is this reason that, you know, we have buildings that are collapsing. And you see El Nino is coming. And actually,
it's here.
It's already here.
Yeah.
Now we are worried already because you're going to see some of these things beginning to happen.
Indeed.
You know? And today's paper has a wonderful spread on promoting mental health as a universal human right. I know we're going to speak about it.
Yeah.
But it's good to see these things in the papers, you know. Like we said, you know, from last year and the years before when we were promoting mental health, and we were saying we need to have these conversations normalized. We need a lot more of these in the newspapers, in the conversations that we have. And I'm happy to see really an increase in some of this. And also to see government now beginning to wake up is really fantastic. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
You know, whenever one talks of mental health, the thing that comes to mind is how it is we would categorize. It's a question we've asked mental health experts. How do you categorize people who are elected and people who understand that they are there to serve the interests of the people, and then they proceed to do the complete opposite with impunity? How, on that scale of people with mental health issues, where do we fit them in?
Where do we fit them in?
I think I was on a panel with Professor Lukoye.
Yes.
And he did say, not expressly, but he did say there's something definitely amiss when it comes to those leaders who are not able to do what it is they're supposed to be doing, when yet, you know, by the time you are reaching there, it was your terms of reference were very clear on what you're supposed to do.
They were absolutely clear.
Yeah.
Yes.
On what you're supposed to do. And when you get there, you totally disregard. Zero empathy to the people who have put you there. You know, there's definitely something there.
You know, it also begs the question, there are some of these tendencies that are considered mental health conditions. Sociopathy, if I may call it that, sociopaths. There are those who say that it's something that is genetic. I think it's acquired.
And he said, actually, he quoted that word. He said sociopaths. That's what he said, yes.
I think it's acquired because someone begins, the story is told of, you know people, and then this thing happens. They are voted in. Then other things happen, and the person changes completely. But I realize this isn't just the position and the power. It's their quest for money that changes things.
That changes things.
Suddenly, their focus is different and their thinking is different. Everything about them has to do with how they can consume conspicuously and as conspicuously as possible.
I hear you saying that this could actually be a mental health issue.
No, it is. I actually believe it is. It is.
There's a problem.
How you can miss this? You know how you got your job, and it's like you wake up 2 months before the election. Don't you think something happened to you in between?
One would say yes, indeed. All right, and so here's another question. Everybody's talking about this El Nino, all saying, look, it's coming. The Met departments, whether on a local or a global scale, have told us at least 6 weeks in advance that this thing is happening. Looking at weather patterns, and I saw a report whereby 6 months ago, there were indications that this is what would happen come October, November in this part of the world. So it was not for want of adequate information, pre-information having been given. So then you ask yourself, in terms of preparedness, where are we? Well, the Auditor General says that government is being exposed on a weak preparation to respond to flooding. An audit in the Office of the Auditor General has revealed inadequacies in the country's flood disaster response, even as El Nino rains loom. And we don't use loom anymore because they are here. The audit covered 4 flooding catchment areas, 6 counties of Baringo, Narok, Busia, Garissa, Tana River, and Kisumu. From July 2017 to 2023, Auditor General Nancy Gathongo noted that government response to flood disaster emergencies was characterized by inadequacies and deficiencies. What on earth does she mean? Despite the government generalizing flood early warning information through the Kenya Meteorological Department and the Water Resource Authority, there was a lack of early action from government actors and the community. According to the report, most of the time, the administrators convened meetings to discuss issues of relief distribution. CT would like that very much. Let's meet and just discuss. Let's discuss. In terms of doing, totally different story.
We meet again to discuss what we discussed.
Yes. Okay. They discussed these issues in what they should do in terms of flood impact and evacuation of victims. She said, now, thereafter, the occurrence of implementation was close to none. There was no national focal agency to spearhead flood management. The audit found that despite floods being one of the natural disasters, there was no agency to handle them. The functions of each level of government were not clearly defined. Consequently, the responses were characterized by duplication of effort, lack of accountability, and non-action, especially from county governments. The lack of a clear mandate on flood response, according to the Auditor General, could be attributed to a lack of a legal framework for flood management. And I think that really is the thing, that there is no management body for disasters in this country. It has been suggested, it has been named as important, but in terms of the implementation, authorization and setup of a disaster management body, that has not happened. So if there's no legal framework for this to happen, how then do you deal with disasters at a national level? With such an emergency, who then will be mandated to deal with it? And so why is it not looked at with some kind of urgency that it actually deserves?
Remember the time when we had all these mudslides and certain parts of the country were actually isolated as a result of this. And then we had the inflows from the lake and people who were marooned and people simply lost literally everything they had. Now, you would assume that when these things are cyclical and they happen very often, that it would be taken note of that if it's happened more than once, then it's likely to happen a third time.
Sure.
That preparations would be made. Nada. Every time we talk as though we've never had these occurrences before, and that it's like we're planning all anew for these things.
Yeah.
What on God's good earth?
It's really sad. I remember in Parliament there was a bill on disaster management, and I don't remember what happened. I think it got caught between the battles that there was between Senate and National Assembly at that time. So it didn't see the light of day, which is absolutely unfortunate. Then I remember, again, when we were in Parliament, when the Solai Dam tragedy happened. I remember you had an interview here on the issue of Solai Dam. And with such a tragedy, only the army had the capacity to deal with, such an emergency. And the question has always been, will we always then just rely on the army for any disaster, In
fact, it's interesting you should mention it, because then the discussion around it, because this matter is actually in court, and the owners were charged and the people who managed were charged with manslaughter, among other things. And you're thinking, the Rift Valley is a fault, okay? There's been the movement of earth in that Rift Valley. We've seen it in Maimahiu.
Yes, it happens in Maimahiu, where the road opens up.
Yes, exactly. On that same property, there was a movement. By the way, it has 7 dams, because I was reading the story. One dam disappeared because the earth suddenly opened and the dam just disappeared. Now, I'm thinking, how is it that people who are unable to tie, you begin with climate change and its effects. You look at the Rift Valley and what it is. You look at why it is. We have all these renewable energy, thermal power. Why do you think it exists? What do you think this is? Steam coming up from what? The bowels of the earth?
Just for fun? It's a problem. Yes. It's a problem, and you should do something about it.
So, there are all these discussions around it, and the disaster should have pointed us to saying something is amiss here.
And something must be done.
And something must be done.
Yeah.
But no. The focus was, these people did wrong. And you're thinking, but around the world at that particular point in time, similar disasters were occurring.
Yes. And how did they take care of them?
Exactly.
Well, we're having a mental health conversation at 7 o'clock. Maybe this will creep in one way or another and ask the questions in terms of what's happening. We're coming around to 7 a.m. this morning. We're getting into suicide prevention and getting into the intrigues of what exactly happens and how we can help to make the situation better. It happens after 7. Let's take a listen to the news. It's 7 a.m.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. President William Ruto is pushing for reforms of the international financing system, which he says is skewed in favor of the global north. President Ruto, while addressing the United Nations General Assembly in New York, called for debt restructuring by giving a 10-year grace period to tens of African nations in debt distress. He cited the International Monetary Fund data, which projects that over 3 billion people are in the blink of falling into distress and in need of global intervention.
According to IMF data, as of last month, 10 low-income countries were already in debt distress, and 52 are at high or moderate risk of falling into debt distress. The 3.3 billion people in these countries are trapped in a vicious circle of emergency responses, reconstruction, and recovery from more frequent climate shocks, which diverts resources away from both development and climate action, and sucking vulnerable countries into a downward spiral of debt and environmental stress. The global community must therefore develop a debt restructuring initiative that does not wait for nations to plunge over the cliff into debt distress before providing relief.
And Head of Public Service Felix Koskei has raised his concerns over wastage in the public service and glaring misuse of public funds by government officials during a meeting with all principal secretaries and chairs of departments. Koskei ordered for immediate stoppage of unjustified foreign or domestic travels and directed all government officers to hold their retreats within the capital, Nairobi.
A meeting that can be held in Nairobi is not necessary for somebody to go to Mombasa, and that we have addressed. You heard the PS Treasury you had saying that we can even change and even use SGR.
I still see from where I sit, I see wasteful expenditure, especially when it comes to even tickets. Going to Mombasa these days, I see a lot of 40,000 shillings to go to Mombasa, or 36, or even to Kisumu, where necessary. For instance, if we have very many people going to Mombasa, heads of every public service, why don't you come up with a policy that we use SGR? Like, if we have money, we can go, all of us, even us, we can fly. I mean, we can go by SGR. Then we reduce, because amounts sometimes we spend is so much.
And members of the Budget and Appropriations Committee have criticized supplementary funding requests by various ministries, departments and state agencies, saying they are abusing the constitutional provisions and defying the budget-making cycle. This is after a report from the Controller of Budget revealed that 18 MDAs had written to the National Treasury requesting for funds for various projects amounting to 15.27 billion shillings, barely 2 months since the approval of the annual budget estimates.
Even Article 223 has fallen victim of the same cash flow issues. So they have gone to the Treasury, they have justified why they need Article 223, but no money to give them.
I'm glad there was no money to be given, but even if that money was there, they don't meet the threshold, if you notice. So ministries are also violating the budgetary process by actually budgeting behind. I'm also surprised we are only in the first quarter of the new financial year and we are seeing such a long list under 223, and most of the expenditures we are seeing in that list are expenditures that are not unforeseen. They are expenditures that should have been included in the budget.
We as a committee agreed that the misuse of Article 223 should not is something that we should.
Some of the requests included a 400 million shillings request by the Office of the State Comptroller to purchase motor vehicles. Now, a Nairobi court has ruled that former Kiambu Governor Ferdinand Waititu, his wife Susan Wangari and 11 others have a case to answer over the irregular awarding of a 588 million shillings road tender in Kiambu County in February 2018. While issuing the verdict, Milimani Chief Magistrate Thomas Nzioki noted that the prosecution had presented sufficient evidence, including 32 witnesses and 741 exhibits, to substantiate their accusations leveled against Waititu and his assumed accomplices. Tomorrow's sports, and the German court threw out this assault conviction of footballer Jerome Boateng for attacking his ex-girlfriend in 2018 and ordered a new trial. In a legal odyssey now on its third ruling, the Superior Regional Court in Munich decided in favor of Boateng's appeal that if the alleged victim as well as state prosecutors citing procedural errors, if it sides with the plaintiff, the new court could level a more severe sentence than the 1.2 million euros fine Boateng was ordered to pay in November 2022. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
Okay, so coming in from the Thika Superhighway, probably where we'll see the most of it right about now. As you're coming in from that outer ring area, that outer ring junction, you get out then towards Pangani at the underpass. A little bit of movement on Kiambu Road as well, but nothing too crazy. And that's the thing this week. It hasn't been too bad. And also, as we look at Mombasa Road, as you come out towards Capital Centre, that's where it's going to slow down. And you get to the Nyeri Stadium roundabout, onto Huru Highway, out towards Haile Selassie at the junction. That's where we're seeing the pockets of traffic this morning. Coming in from Cabanas, going towards North Airport Road, and then on to the Eastern Bypass, there's in and outbound movement. As you're coming off Langata Road, we're seeing a pile up here as well. It looks like it's going to be a busy area for some time as you get closer into traffic hour. All right, are you coming out of Westlands? You should be all right. As you get towards Chiromo, that is flowing. Quite some traffic, but it's flowing, and we're not at any dead ends, at least not for now. It looks like we're getting into Friday just right. Let's try to keep it just so. And we talk on Spice FM KE on X.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Friday, the 22nd of September 2023, Kenya's biggest conversation gets into its second hour. Karibu sana and welcome to all of our audiences joining us across social media and on KTN News and KTN Home. Welcome to this conversation. All right, so we're having a mental health conversation this hour. It is Health Friday, and as we do that, we're going to look into suicide, big ticket item when it comes to mental health, and we'll be looking at its awareness and prevention. And our guest to help us have that conversation is already seated in the hot seat this morning. Ednah Chawia, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good to have you here. The Ednah we know, normally we don't see her, but a great force to be reckoned with. Mm-hmm. And so now here is another Ednah sitting on this side. So it's great to have you here as well. Thank you so much for being here. We're getting into this hour, and Ndu Okoh, C.T. Muga with you here. And our guest host for this show is architect Sylvia Kasanga. You know, I want to say senator every time. That's the thing that politics will do to you, isn't it? Architect Sylvia Kasanga is also the Board of Trustees chairperson at Lukenya University, and she's steering conversations with us this morning. Welcome once again.
Thank you, Joe.
All right. So there are many things happening at the same time, but I want to tell us about one thing that happens in October, about a month from now. It's the 20th edition of a very special event, and it's Kenya's largest single-day athletics event. It's back. It's in grander style. Like I said, it's the 20th one, and it's in the name of the Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon. Takes place on the 29th of October, which is Sunday, and it kicks off from Uhuru Gardens, and you have the chance between now and then to register on www.nairobimarathon.com. Register with 2,000 shillings, and then get ready to run in whatever category you will do. Whatever you do, as you pay, however you participate, all the proceeds of your participation goes towards the Future Makers program, which helps young people, especially girls and people with disability, to learn, earn, and grow. Register today and make a difference in these lives. Ednah, karibu once again. As we go into this conversation, CT Muga is going to welcome you with a proverb from Malawi.
This is our final day of our proverbs from the country of Malawi, otherwise known as the Republic of Malawi. It's a landlocked country. Yes.
They say land-linked. They don't say landlocked.
Actually,
they call it land-linked because they're so linked.
That is a very, very interesting way of putting it. Yes, I agree with you.
Yes, because they have a lot of things they benefit from their immediate neighbors.
Thank you. Land-linked. Very good indeed. Who can tell me what the capital city of Malawi is?
Which capital? Are you looking for commercial or administrative?
Just tell me both.
She knows.
Tell me both. Let's start with commercial.
Blantyre.
Very good. Good. Now don't answer the next one.
Okay.
Administrative.
It's Lilongwe.
Yes, it is Lilongwe. Yes. Excellent. Okay. What is the commercial capital of Kenya?
Kirinyaga Road. Okay, sorry.
Downtown Nairobi.
Nairobi. Okay. What's the administrative capital of Kenya? Nairobi. An upstart is a sparrow trying to marry a hornbill.
Ednah, you have the... we have the pleasure of asking CT to say that again.
I know, yeah.
An upstart is a sparrow trying to marry a hornbill. Right. Now we're going to ask you your opinion.
What do you make of that, Ednah?
What do you think the writers of this proverb were trying to say?
I would need to know the unique characteristics of a sparrow. And
apart from being a bird.
Yeah.
It's small.
Yeah. Or apart from, and a hornbill?
The beak is really big, but it's bigger than a sparrow. Distinctly. In fact, the beak is bigger than the body of the sparrow. Yes.
So there are many ways to view that. So an upstart is a sparrow trying to marry a hornbill, is it? That would mean, I could look at it from the point of view of if you wanna, no matter how small you are, for you to be able to move ahead or move up, then you need to be able to aim for something higher. That's one perspective I think of.
Good.
Yeah.
Ndu would say, voila.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Very good. See, the thing about Proverbs, your perspective can't be wrong. That's your perspective. That is how you interact with the proverb.
That's true.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Indeed. All right. I guess we'll see more insight into that as we go along.
Yeah.
Suicide prevention and awareness is what we're talking about now on this Health Friday conversation. Ednah, once again, thank you for joining us. You are a consultant psychologist, rather, and with Minute Kenya. And so one would assume that you come into... you come in touch with a lot of these conversations quite often. Let's start off with suicide, and it could seem like we know exactly what suicide is, and so it's easy for us to discuss what exactly is suicide as we go into this conversation now.
Okay. So suicide, if you were to define it, would be self-injury with the intent of dying. Yeah, that's what suicide would be. Doing something to yourself that would ultimately result to your own or in your own death. That's what suicide would be. That's how I would define it. Yeah.
Okay. And as we look at Kenya today, Kenya specific, have we seen over time that the cases of attempted or unfortunately successful suicide have risen? And if they have, what can we see are the causes behind these cases of suicide?
Okay. Looking at Kenya today, yes, indeed, the cases of suicide have been on the rise. And I know the causes are varied. In fact, we don't even say causes per se. We call them risk factors. Okay. Because if we were to talk causes, then one thing would automatically result in something else. So rarely do we say we have one specific cause for suicide. In most cases, it's multiple issues that somebody is dealing with. So when we are to look at that, there are definitely the biological aspects. Biological aspects would mean things that would interfere with someone's neurochemistry, which results in a mental illness, yeah? Because when our neurochemistry is interfered with or affected one way or the other, then we may end up having a mental illness like depression or anxiety, which is a risk factor. The other thing we do that affects our neurochemistry is substance use. So anytime people expose themselves to or indulge in excessive substance use, they're altering their neurochemistry one way or another. But then beyond that, then we have social stressors. We experience so many things. We have financial issues we are going through. We have marital issues and family issues that people are facing. We have sometimes even the fact that other people use it for coping. Those who, when we look at people, there are people that we look up to. So when we notice that someone we looked up to might have committed suicide at some point, there are times when that can model to everyone else under them that this is an option. This is something you can do. So I wouldn't really say one specific cause, but I'd attribute it to biological factors. But then beyond that, we have environmental factors, the spaces we live in, the kind of messages we listen to, the kind of people we interact with, social factors, the kind of experiences we go through, trauma, adverse childhood experiences, pain, and things like that, the kind of mental health illnesses we may experience, including substance use, including depression. People who experience psychotic disorders as well may also be at risk, among other things. So it's a whole load of factors that would possibly be risk factors to suicide.
Right.
Yeah.
Do we have numbers in terms of those who have attempted suicide and versus those who have been successful, and which numbers outweigh the other?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. So allow me to start with thinking. Those who have thought about suicide, by the way, are very many people to think about suicide at any given time. Sometimes I say even the Kiswahili saying, I wish the ground could open, it's a Kiswahili saying, but allow me to say it in English. I wish the ground would open up and swallow me. It's a suicidal thought. If you think about it, it can be perceived as a suicidal thought. There are times when you can't feel very overwhelmed and you're driving, you're passing by a road, you're in a situation, and for a moment there, the fleeting thought passes by. It's just that you never do anything about it. So the truth is we have very many people. In fact, when we think about suicidality, think like a triangle, at the very base is everyone who thinks about it. So many people will think about it at one point or the other. However, not everybody who thinks about it proceeds to plan for it. Remember, triangle, so we are moving up. So you realize the base has a larger number, but then there's a lesser number moving up for those who actually plan.
Right.
Now, not everybody who plans will attempt. Yeah. So, and not everybody who attempts succeeds. However, the fact that somebody has planned or somebody has attempted is a risk factor. Those are risk factors we have to pay attention to. Because if they attempt again, they might just succeed this time. Yeah. So if I was to look at the numbers, that's how I would think of it. The people who think about it are many. The people who plan are less than those who think about it. And those who attempt are less than those who plan. And those who succeed are also less than those who attempt. Yes.
I'm curious. Yeah. It's always puzzled me. What is it that happens to someone? It can't be one thing. It may be a combination of things. To get to a point where you actually feel that staying alive is a waste of your time. What gets one to that particular place?
Okay. I think one emotion that is, maybe not even one emotion. There are a few emotions that are linked. to that particular state. But maybe even before I talk about the emotion, let me tell you, emotions are the center of our lives. Emotions drive our behaviors. That's what, yes.
Really?
Emotions drive our behaviors. And in most cases, emotions result from what is in our mind. So if I think I'm not good enough, I will feel worthless or inadequate. And if I feel worthless or inadequate, then I want to hide away from everybody. That's what I mean.
So the thinking, the mind influences our emotion.
Yes. Yeah.
And our emotions also influence our thinking.
They do have an inverse relation, two-sided, bi-directional relationship, yes. But in most cases, the emotion is as a result of the thought. So if you wanted to trace, if you're struggling to figure out the thought, you can start with the emotion. Then you'll get the thought that is linked to that emotion.
Give us an example of that, could you? Okay. For example, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, the likelihood is that I'm going to think to do something about that. Is that what you're saying?
No.
Okay.
If I'm feeling overwhelmed, there's a reason I'm feeling overwhelmed.
There's so much work, there's pressure in the family, there's something. So that's the feeling of this overwhelming feeling that comes as a result.
So there's so much work is the situation. There's so much going on in the family. Those are situations. And situations we can never control, isn't it? So there's so much work. Everyone is against me. Everyone is coming for me. Those are the situations you're going through. Because there's so much work, I am thinking, oh my God, I can't cope. This is going to kill me. Everyone in my family don't love me. That thought will make me feel overwhelmed as a result. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So what you can quickly identify is the emotion. I'm feeling overwhelmed. And you'll even say, I don't know why. So as a therapist, I was to help you, I'd start by tracking, okay, what triggered this feeling of being overwhelmed? Because the thought does not automatically come to us. And yet we have automatic thoughts all the time. You walk into a room, there's a thought that will cross your mind. And you don't even have control over that thought. There's the first thought that crosses your mind when you walk into a room. Who are these people? Why are they looking at me? It's an automatic thought. No matter how confident you are, no matter what there's an automatic thought that will precede and trigger an emotion. That emotion will trigger a behavior. Now, there's processed thought that follows the automatic thought, or that you can deliberately engage in to alter how you feel. Okay? So there's an example I love using. I walk into a room and find a panel of 5 big-bodied gentlemen seated ready to interview me. There are many thoughts that could cross my mind. So I can't determine who sits in the panel. But when I walk in, I might begin to feel sweaty, anxious, my heart is racing, and I can't figure out why. It goes back to when I walked in, how did I appraise that situation? I looked at this gentleman and said, oh my God, there's no way I'm getting this job. These people are too intimidating. I don't think they will like me. I'm not good enough for this position. That thought made me feel anxious. And that anxiety is the reason why I'm sweating, I'm fidgeting. You ask me my name, I've forgotten my name. I can't even. So what was my name again? and I can tell you, your mind can block to the point you actually can't remember. So with awareness, when I know, then I try to track back, and then I need to change the thought. Because my power lies in changing the thought. So instead of thinking, these guys will not like me, why not think, okay, Ednah, they've never met you before. They have no reason not to like you. Give yourself a chance. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's how, the moment I think, Ednah, they've never met you before, they have no reason not to like you. Automatically, my feeling will change. Because now I'll feel calmer, maybe even more centered. And as a result, my behavior may also change.
Talking of anxiety, is it the same anxiety where I want to leave and I think I have misplaced my car keys, and I start looking, and I'm really looking, and I'm looking for it. And then my child tells me, but your keys are in your hands.
That's a good one. Although that is more linked to memory lapses.
Yes.
For a moment there's a reason why you have forgotten, or you cannot feel your key in your hand.
Is the lapse as a result of my anxiety, or is it that I'm getting old and my mind is beginning to fail?
Can actually be both. Can actually be both. There's an element of definitely as we grow older, we have diminishing capacities as we grow older, unfortunately. Or it's just part of life, yeah? And we need to exercise our brains, by the way, to enhance performance for our brains as we grow older. But then beyond that, anxiety makes your functioning shut down. Your executive functioning is slowed down when you're anxious.
Okay.
Because everything is targeted towards one direction. This pain, this overwhelming feeling you're feeling, this worry you're feeling, whatever it is you're appraising in that situation, is making, so everything is channeled there. Meaning, every other place in your brain that needs you to function well is sort of slowed down as a result.
Is this the point where we now bring in the ecosystem or the environment and how it influences our thinking and in turn influences our emotion? Okay, so
absolutely.
Okay.
And let me just ask you on the issue of thinking.
Yeah.
Because you're saying thinking influences the emotion. So when you are discussing self-awareness, are you also saying then we should control the thinking process as well?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Because we say, remember, the environment or the situation you can't control. You cannot stop what's coming at you. You cannot decide these are the experiences I'll have. You cannot decide whether it will rain or not, whether the sun will shine or not, whether the government will do what you want or not. And it is it. You can't. There are things outside of you really can't control. However, how you respond to the things that happen or the situations or the environment you are in are within your control. And that is why actually we have these conversations.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are we saying then that at the point that it gets to suicide, is there the decision, because now you think about it, you plan it, you attempt it, you succeed. That's a hierarchy that we're looking at, right? So are we saying that at the point where a suicide is attempted, that there's a kind of blocker to that change of thought process? So there's something that stops you from thinking in the opposite direction and you continue with this mal-thinking that gets you to then attempt? So is that where we look at a mental blocker that's happening here, or what happens in there that thought cannot change?
Okay, I'll explain. Now, when somebody begins to think about suicide, they're feeling cornered. It's like being stuck in that corner, and no matter which direction you're looking, there's no solution that works. Isn't it? So you're feeling, I can't pull through this again. I don't think I have what it takes to get out of this situation. I'm done. So you're thinking of suicide as a solution in that moment. Is it a good solution? No, because it costs you your life. However, the person who's thinking about it is feeling so hopeless and so helpless. They have nothing else left. Why are they feeling hopeless and helpless? Because of how they have appraised the situation that they are in. From where they sit, there is no way out of this situation. When I feel there is no way out, I'm better off out. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's, and I'm always careful to say there are two kinds of people who can commit suicide. One is the planner. There's someone who will actually plan systematically over time, and they'll actually achieve. But then there's someone who does not necessarily plan. They may have poor coping, but they don't necessarily plan. So you wake up one day and you're told, the wife you have been married to for 5 years, or for 20 years, or 25 years, has been having another relationship, and all the 5 children you have are not your children.
That one is a tough one.
That's a very tough one.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
So in that moment, you get that message, you are just walking out of the building. You can walk into the road and just die. Because in that moment, everything has just been shut down. My past is a lie. I have nothing else left to live for. You may not even have fully thought about what are the consequences. Actually, don't think about the consequences. You're just thinking, I need to get out of this place I am in right now. I feel trapped. I need to get out. I feel I can't do it anymore. I need to get out. So you don't think beyond. You don't think beyond that thought. And that's why we look at, if we were to look at prevention, then we would have to come back to what are the coping strategies you have.
Okay.
If you are caught up in that situation, is there someone you can call? Is there someone I just need to take a walk. Is there a place you can sit?
And I have to ask this question.
Yeah.
When we think of the structure of what you call a traditional society, were suicides common, or are they even evidenced?
I don't think they were evidenced. I don't think many of them may have been reported. Common, maybe not. But then it's also hard for us to tell because we have no data to back that entirely. Have we been told of instances where people committed suicide? Yes, they are there. Do they look like there were very few? Yes, they do. But then you realize, even we say we have many suicides because there's more reporting. So when there's no reporting or less reporting, then you cannot really justify if there are more or less. Yeah.
It's an interesting discussion because, yes, almost everything we will say about it has a truism attached to it. Because one, it is argued that the support system that one has, and you've alluded to it, that if you feel you're alone, now why do you feel you're alone? Because there is no support system that you can attach yourself to. Now, the so-called traditional setup had that.
That's true.
It was there. Now, again, a support system could also be adverse.
Yeah, that's true.
It could be toxic, okay?
That's true.
But it exists. Now, this balance, and this is why I brought in the environment and its contribution, because we argue that human beings evolve, but our evolution seems to work towards our extinction, because the more we evolve, the more we hear of people killing themselves or taking their lives. So, what is it about our evolutionary process that we seem to have missed? Or what is it about us as human beings and certain hard drive traits that we have we missed in our evolutions so that this killing of self has taken a very, 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 very prominent role in our lives? What is it?
I like your perspective, an interesting perspective there, because I'm just thinking, it's like the more we simplify life, the easier it is. If you look at back in the day, life was a lot harder. They had to be a lot more, they had to be very resilient. It wasn't very easy to think about suicide as an option, isn't it?
You're too busy to think of suicide.
You are too busy, exactly. You had too many things to do. So it's not the first thought. It looks like it was not necessarily the first thought that would cross people's minds back in the day. However, now we have time, honestly, and now we are aware because we are seeing it happening all around us, isn't it? Now we have sometimes even more resources, accessibility to the things we can use to commit the said suicide, among other things. We may not exactly have enough people telling us, don't lose hope, or enough activities or things that give us a reason not to lose that hope, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's how I would perceive what you have just shared. It's like the simpler, if you ask the older people, this life would look really simple.
Yeah.
Because we don't have to work as hard to analyze. We have to work hard, but we don't have to go to the shamba to earn a living, do half the things they used to do. We are not doing the manual work and things like that. So not to mean we are working less, but life looks simpler.
Simpler.
Yeah, if you were to compare the two. And yet the simpler it is, the harder it is. Our children get to enjoy. Our children practically live
very differently.
Very
I
different.
just want to weigh in a little.
Can we take a break on that?
Yes.
And then we'll come back and have that weigh in. It's 28 minutes to 8 o'clock. Having a conversation this morning with Ednah Chawia, and we're looking at suicide awareness and prevention, how to navigate these tough waters. We'll be back right after this.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
When you're impeached, you're impeached. When you're sentenced, you're sentenced.
Madam Chief Justice.
Until the sentence is set aside.
Ukibeba vitu kwa roho utakufa. If you carry things in your heart, you will die.
the reason for which you went to school and then gathered experience, that reason must be paid for.
All right.
Okay.
This level.
Shape up or ship out.
Levels don't change.
No.
It's about shipping up.
You're my business partner here.
Shipping out.
Are we talking about the sheep in the bathtub? Or
the sheep man?
Emmanuel Talabu used to tell us a story of they were in school and they've been told to write composition about a sheep. His classmate raised a hand. Teacher, are you talking about the sheep or a sheep goat?
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
16 degrees, partly sunny conditions in Nairobi, highs of 25 and lows of 14. And we'll see lows of 14 in a mostly sunny Nakuru, going to highs of 25. 25 will be the high in a partly sunny Nyeri at 16. And 13 is what it is in mostly sunny Eldoret, going to highs of 24. It's sunny at 25 in Mombasa and sunny at 26 in Malindi. 20 and sunny in Kisumu, going to highs of 29. And Kakamega will see highs of 28, where it's currently sunny at 18. Kampala is sunny at 19, highs of 28, and we'll see highs of 29 in a mostly sunny Dar es Salaam, currently at 25. It's 13 and sunny in Johannesburg, highs of 28 and lows of 13, and it's mostly cloudy at 26 in Lagos, going to highs of 30, 24, and mostly clear in Kinshasa, highs of 33 and lows of 23.
Spice up your life.
All right, so traffic still certain parts of the city this morning. Not too crazy. A lot of movement on Kiambu Road right about now, and we're seeing that heavy as you're coming towards Muthaiga Square. Also looking at traffic coming off of Ngong Road. This we can handle, not too bad. It's busy, but it's moving, and we're not at bumper to bumper anywhere, not for now. The Eastern Bypass is pretty busy as well as you're coming in from that Roy Junction. Outbound traffic is also doing the thing. The Thika Superhighway is the busiest of them all, with traffic coming from Githurai, Outer Ring Junction, and then out towards Muranga Road or going towards Wangari Maathai. It's a little bit busy coming out of Westlands. James Gishore also piling up here and there, and we're seeing some outbound traffic on Wayaki Way. We're going to keep an eye on that. It is, after all, the weekend, getting into it, and we'll see how traffic leaving the city affects traffic coming in. Spice FMKE on X. Let's keep things moving as we talk.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Look, and the conversation on suicide awareness and prevention, it continues. Sylvia had a question.
Thank you. Yeah, I was weighing in on what City you're saying, where human beings, where we are evolving to. And I think that's a very pertinent issue we must bring out to the fore, because we are sinking more into loneliness. The social order that we've known traditionally is breaking down. The family unit is breaking down. And human beings, we are not built to be alone. And if you see some of the, more forward countries, the countries, first world countries, there's a lot of loneliness that is reported. And actually the suicide rates are much, much higher because of this loneliness. And you find, in fact, the loneliness is not just even amongst the young people. The young people may have other social determinants maybe, but as they grow older, the older generation, you find very lonely older people. Korea, for instance, and Japan is having its own challenges when it comes to the social discourse, where people are not meeting face to face. There's less and less and less of that. Human beings were not meant to be, living by yourself. And I think that is the one thing about our traditional African system that we should say we really miss. And if there was a way to incorporate that back into our current lifestyles and find a balance, it would be great. My book club reading a couple of months ago was on Ikigai, which talks about, the secrets of long life. That a few areas in Japan have figured it out, where people live to many years, over 100 plus. And one of the things that actually comes out is the social interactions, that they go into these groupings where they support each other. They have groupings where people support each other. So if you're financially down, you have a safe space, a safe group where you can pull each other up. When somebody's a bit down, you pull each other up. And these are important conversations we need to bring back to our young people as we speak. The creation of a safe space. A lot of women have sort of figured this thing out. Women are good at, having social groupings where they can support each other. Some of our churches...
Are you saying men are not good at having social
I just
groupings?
gave an example.
Well, maybe she can tell us, are they?
Actually, I have seen a group of men who have formed, a bond which is a safe space for themselves. And it's beautiful because then they support each other. And when somebody is down, you pull each other. You pull each other up. I think these are very important conversations we must have today and push for such. Remember when we were growing up, and for those of us who are older in the African system, you were always in a group of what do you call them? In an age group. You grew up in an age group, and you went through different stages of life together. You were mentored, and you had people looking out for you, and then it was kind of defined then which way you're going. Now we're in a world that is super evolving fast. We are barely coping, and in Africa, like I always say, we are leapfrogging because we are sort of trying to catch up with the West. Because of all the social media connectivity, we are seeing what's happening in the West. We want to catch up with the West. But at the same time, tumeacha mila zetu. So what are we becoming? Mwacha mila, we are now beginning to float around without being rooted. And that is one of the reasons, I think, why our society is struggling so much with mental illness, because we are not rooted. We've forgotten the things that make us solid and grounded. And then we have lost this social connectivity, which is also affecting our family unit, the base at which, we draw strength from, and growth.
Do we see this? And I think this is one of the, we've seen that question also pop up this morning. And that, because if we do look at the statistics, whether it's worldwide or the few statistics that we have here in Kenya, that more men tend to commit and succeed at suicide than women. Why is that? And is that what you've seen as well?
Well, there's an element of truth there, or based on the statistics that have been out there, that there's a high number of men who may commit suicide in comparison to women. But I'd explain it this way. I think women, you're right in saying women have social support of sorts. Women easily destroy each other, but women don't hold back from sharing their most intimate struggles with each other. So they are very open and very vulnerable. The only problem is, on the flip side, they easily use that against each other. But you see, sometimes I say, when we hold back from sharing ourselves because of shame, because of fear of being judged, we are at a higher risk than someone who shares, are ashamed, but they get the help. You get? So sometimes I think women, yes, have an easier time handling shame. The place of a man in society is very prideful and he needs to look strong. There are all these narratives we've built around the men. You need to look strong. You need to look like you have it all together. You need to look like you're in control. You need to look like you're domineering. You need to give us a sense of direction, among other things. So what happens is, because of all those narratives that the men then have to live up to, and I don't even think I cover them in their entirety, then they're less likely to ask for help when they need it. They have less intimate conversations with each other. I think when men meet, would you ever tell a gentleman, yesterday I slept hungry. Yes. Yeah.
Or yesterday, my wife clobbered me with a sufuria.
That's the thing. Would you tell men that when you're seated with them anywhere?
Why on earth would I tell them such a thing?
That's the thing. That's the thing. So you see, what we think, and unfortunately, we like men for being in control. But being in control sets up men.
But are they really in control? This control that men are supposed to have. Well, speaking of, are we really in control? And what does that control mean? In essence, we think we're in control.
That's the thing.
And most African women, in their wisdom, make the African men think they're in control.
Yeah, true.
They understand it very, very well.
Yeah.
So, and why do you need to be in control?
You're right.
As we look at prevention and also look at awareness of this, a lot of times we hear, I mean, we read a number of things in terms of when somebody says something, it could possibly be a cry for help, and how seriously should you take those cries for help. I remember one of my closest friends did actually cry for help, and he said he was going to take his own life, and we all kind of thought like, okay, well, maybe there's an overwhelming situation. He did take his own life. He did succeed. It haunts me to this day because I think, well, if we had thought about it a little bit more seriously, perhaps we could have then been able to, have a chat with him. So when somebody says something like that, what should you do? How should you rally support? At that point, is it a cry for help or is it crying wolf? What is it?
Well, you're better off taking precaution than being careless at the expense of someone's life. So in therapy, we never say there's no one you should anytime someone cries out for help, take them seriously. Take them seriously, interrogate what is going on first before you can decide they're just crying wolf.
But Ednah, there's something again about this modern society in which we live in. People don't seem to be very concerned genuinely about other people's problems. They don't actually want to know or forget. Let's start with hear. They may want to hear, but they don't really want to know.
That's true.
Not really.
Yeah.
They prefer to associate with people who are not going to tell them their problems or people who they believe don't have problems. That they're comfortable with. But they are very uncomfortable with grappling with issues, especially personal issues. Or let's talk about men. Most men would prefer to pay lip service to it. No, Polly, one, have a drink. And then that's done. So now, even when we talk about the norms where people are supposed to share and people are supposed to be able to understand that this sharing is part of your wellness, with all these competing interests that we have in modern life, this is part of our evolution, and all of them competing for space. This space where you arrive at, for lack of a better expression, self-realization and understanding of what you need to do, it takes a backseat because everything else seems to be of importance and has an immediacy to it that calls for your attention every single day and every moment. Yes.
I think culturally, we don't support. Culturally, sharing problems is found to be like complaining. It's perceived as complaining. You're getting lacking gratitude, not having a focus. So that also is something that can feed into the people not sharing whatever issues they may have in the situation they are in. You're getting, because when they share, what am I supposed to do with it? You're sharing with me so that I do what with it? Then something else is, we are also not built to handle people's emotions. I mean, when we go for funerals, you've lost a loved one, be strong. What am I doing? I don't know what to do with your tears, so I need you to stop crying. The only way I know to help you stop crying is to remind you, this is God's will. You just be strong. Yeah, you'll be fine. God knows, God's will has been done.
All will be well.
All will be well. It's because I don't know what to do with your emotions. If I came here and just broke down and started crying, that's the thing.
Yeah,
what do you do with
like, okay,
exactly?
So,
what do you do with?
We'd give you water to drink.
That's the thing, and possibly tell, do you need a minute? Do you need a bathroom break? So you need to push me out of your space as fast as possible
to make
so
you more comfortable.
Actually, it's not me you're trying to make.
Me who is pushing you away. It's for me to be more comfortable than you.
Exactly. You're looking at your own need. You're not factoring in my need. So even when you're offering someone a drink, they tell you, I'm going through this. Aya here. Kunywa moja. Basically, you're dealing with your need. I don't know what to do with you, so let me do something that I think you need so that you get out of my space.
So how can you help somebody who's suicidal? What can you do? What can we do? Because, for example, somebody's not going to walk up to you and say, well, Sylvia, today I think I'm going to kill myself. No, probably you would have heard other things that they would have said before that that would then end up in that, thought. How can we help? What do we hear that we need to act on?
Actually, everything we hear, most of the things or everything we hear, we need to act on. I say people need to start paying attention a little more. But I can't pay attention to you if I can't pay attention to myself. If I'm floating through life, I will float through your life. So there's an element of self. We need to go back to that place where there's an element of self-discovery and self-acceptance. When I am accepting of myself, I'll easily hear you when you talk to me. When I'm not accepting of myself or not comfortable in my own skin, when you bring me problems, I'll be uncomfortable with the problems you're bringing me, and I need to push them back because they don't align with who I am becoming. So I'd say it's not necessarily one specific thing that we can do, one particular thing that would automatically address everything. Even the conversation we are having here today creates awareness. It gives someone one particular thing to think about that they can do something about. Another thing that goes beyond that is people need to become more and more self-aware. Because when we become more and more self-aware, we become more self-accepting and therefore can practice self-compassion. When we can practice self-compassion, when I tell you, you say, "Good morning, Ednah," I'll say, "Well, I'm not sure it's a good morning." You'll hear me. Because that happens a lot and we don't hear people. We really don't hear people. Because I'm expecting you generically or socially. I just expect you to just say good morning, good morning. And even if you didn't say good morning back, I didn't hear that part. Because my expectation, I go with my expectation. I don't go with what you said. So we need to be more and more present to what each of us is saying. But then we also need to learn to be true friends with each other. I always say the people who hurt people have their own hearts. Deal with your heart so that you stop hurting the people around you. Then you can effectively help even the people in your space. But for as long as we have more and more people hurting and then they're not aware of the pain they're going through, then they cause pain in return. And therefore they are unable to avail themselves. I don't have extra. Where do I get the extra bandwidth to support you when I am in pain myself? Does that make sense? So sometimes I also don't blame people for not hearing because we are all lost in our own stories. But then it helps to deal with my own story or clarify my own story so that I can hear you when you talk to me. We really need to go back to, and it goes back to the social support. Social support is a significant protective factor for all mental health issues. Just having that one person you can tell, I don't want to talk, I just want to walk. Can you walk with me? But the people don't realize the magic of that. But then again, we're also dealing with poverty. So there are people who will be thinking, okay, I feel like this, but everyone is chasing the next big shilling. Yeah. So where am I supposed to be getting this person who I will sit down with and talk with and walk with? You know, there are many factors that would prevent that, but as much as possible, we can use what is quickly within our reach. And that starts with just beginning to listen to each other, genuinely and sincerely. When somebody tells you, I'm thinking of killing myself, please take them seriously. Interrogate why. The sad thing about suicide is it is truly preventable.
Do you stay? Because oftentimes you hear as well that somebody in that position would be classified as what you may want to call stubborn in resolve. That they say, leave me alone, this is it. Do you keep coming back until there's a break? What do you do?
Actually, you do. And I don't think they don't all behave the same way. Not all of them will dismiss. Can we prevent all suicides? Maybe not. I don't think we can ever get to a place where we can say we can prevent suicides 100% because there are different factors that would predispose someone to this. The snap suicide, you cannot say because you don't know what someone will encounter that would push them to that. However, can we prevent most of them? Yes, we can. So the idea is as much as possible, do your best. In the place you are, do your best. If somebody tells you, if they're behaving in a manner likely to suggest they're thinking of harming themselves, that also comes with just self-harm. You notice somebody with marks, weird marks around their body. They're burning their body, they're scratching themselves with things, they're inserting things in their body and things like that. Those could also be telltale signs. There are many things to look out for that would tell you, please pay attention to the people around your space. But then it's also easy to pay attention when this person is connected to you. If you're alone or you're walking through life alone, nobody will see. Therefore, that also puts you at risk. If you live alone, you have no friends, you don't interact with anybody, then it means even when you think about suicide, there'll be no one to quickly notice, we need to pay attention to so-and-so and help in the place that they are. Yeah.
Is it still illegal in Kenya? And I'm thinking that we're already dealing with very difficult situation. And if somebody attempts suicide and fails, they've committed a crime against the state. How do you deal with that, and why should it be an issue of the law and illegality? Should it be?
Well, the jury is out. People have different perspectives on that, and the law itself contradicts itself because there's a right to life of dignity. There's a right to health. There's a right to, you should not be discriminated against, isn't it? Among other things. You should receive the best care when you're struggling with, that's part of, those are part of our rights. But then when you say you arrest somebody who's attempted suicide, then it goes against those rights. So even the law has aspects where it contradicts itself. However, law supersedes everything. We cannot really, we can challenge it, we can question it, we can do our best, and lawmakers can actually do their best to try and see if they can push to have those aspects of law change. But yes, indeed, currently it's still very illegal to commit suicide. If you attempt suicide and you're caught, yes, you will be arrested, and yes, you do serve a 2-year term, I think, or you pay a fine because of that. So it's punishing you. Now, the argument we have as psychologists is, or even people in the mental health space is, you're punishing me for not being mentally well. You get? And that in itself is a problem. And those are some of the arguments that we are trying to push to the best of our ability to just see if we can have that law reviewed.
On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you say is the mental health situation in Kenya? 1 being it's very good, 10 being it's,
I'd say 5 or
so
even 3.
We're not doing too well, are we?
No, I don't think we're doing too well. And if I was to look at that, we think mental health is only about the mental health disorders. But then we have mental health issues that come before the disorders. And those are the everyday stressors that we deal with. Everyday stressors that affect the way we feel about ourselves. That's when now
this environment and ecosystem thing come into play.
Exactly.
So if cost of living is high, I'm very likely to be mentally stabilized.
Financial issues are actually a mental health issue. Yes. Yeah. So if the cost of living on its own, is it making you have sleepless nights? Is it affecting your ability to eat? Is it affecting your relationships? Is it affecting your ability to function? Are you able to concentrate as you should at the workplace? For as long as those things are checked off, then you're struggling with your mental health
so
in that regard.
MP lies more than the neighboring constituency's MP, that is also a problem.
Well, it depends also on how important it is to you. You're right. It depends on how invested you are in that, or how important it is to you. Because if you're very invested in your MP and you feel their lying is directly impacting you, and it can, there are those who are closely allied to them, so it can really affect them.
I bring this because essentially we're saying that relationships and how we relate to people are often at the center of everything that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So when you have a situation like what I see in Kenya, not as evolving, but continuing to evolve in this very direction, where we quantify people, we quantify the things your net worth is considered to be your net value. Okay? And so we relate to you according to that quantification. So that aspect of relationship is likely to have a snowballing effect, which in turn will ensure that this situation we are speaking about will actually get worse.
It's highly likely, actually, because we focus on all the wrong things and forget your social worth is of greater value than your net worth. Actually, your social worth, you can have people carry you through the worst seasons, but your money can't always do everything for you.
Indeed.
That's true. It can't do everything for you, but people can carry
Kenyans more and more believing that your money can do everything for you.
Unfortunately. But I also think that's also because of the models we have. It looks like the people who've made it in our villages are just the ones who had money. The people who make something of them are just the ones who have. It looks like. Our definition of making it or success is the problem. I'd think of it that way. Because if we were to define success with the kind of successful relationships we have, there's more longevity
in it.
Exactly. Yeah.
The mental health conversation in this country is one that one would hope would have been gripped a little bit more seriously, even as we come to the end of this conversation. What are we hoping will be front and center when it comes to dealing with mental health? Suicide now being one of those factors under mental health generally. We're seeing some movement, some conversations, but should it be treated as a national disaster as was prescribed a couple of years ago?
Well, I think so. I think mental health issues should be given a lot of attention and be treated, especially because they're preventable. So when they keep impacting lives and affecting and taking away affect quality of life, affect society, affect perception, encourage, when we talk about a happy society, I mean, mental health issues are the reasons why we don't experience happiness in our society, if you think about it, So yes, indeed, that is something that needs to be paid attention to. Yes, indeed. If it is possible to declare, to think of it as a real disaster or a national disaster that we need to put more focus and resources on, I think that's something that should be done so that everybody gets help. Because the flip side of it is, if we don't pay attention to it, only those who have resources
will get
to access the help.
How can people access you? I think it's a question that has also come today. If somebody needs to reach out and speak to you, Ednah, how can they do that?
Okay. So I do work I do consult for Minet. So one of the ways to reach me would be through Minet. I know that is possible. But then beyond that is through social media as well. Yeah, you look for Ednah Chawia. You will find me. I'd like to believe I'm the only one out there.
And you will respond.
Yes, and I will respond.
Maybe I can just give a take home that I've taken from you today is the issue of self-awareness. And because, a lot of mental health issues they start at a young age. In fact, they say from the age of 13, 14 is when mental health issues begin. So my take home is that this conversation on self-awareness and emotional intelligence needs to happen to that demographic. I think our high schools and our campus needs to emphasize on self-awareness and emotional intelligence amongst our youth.
Very, very true, because it will help with self-regulation. If you can master the self, you can take charge of the world.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Ednah Chawia, consultant, psychologist, thank you for being here this morning as we look at those important issues. Thanks for being our guest on the Situation Room this morning. Conversations continue. It's 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. As the National Dialogue Committee continues to collect opinions from Kenyans, health workers and leaders from marginalized communities have already submitted the memoranda to the committee, led by KMPDU Secretary General Davia Tala. They have said that health issues should be included in the talks as they concern the common man.
When we are discussing agendas of the national issue, of national cohesion, the matter of healthcare is very important because we must have healthy population to have a working or an economy that can actually be said to be functional.
These as the leaders from the marginalized communities want the committee to focus on their interest, claiming that they have not been properly represented in government.
Na mimi ni mmoja wa minorities and marginalized community in Kenya. Nimetoka jamii ya washelisheli. Ningependa kusema asante sana kwa rais wetu mpendwa William Samoei Ruto, kwa sababu saizi ametutambua kwa kutupatia ofisi, kutupatia director ambaye atakuwa akisikiza malilio yetu.
So before you is a very detailed document that we have presented. These people are people that are being faced with various challenges ranging from representations. Because of the numerical strength, they cannot be able to send their members to the county assemblies, national assembly or senate.
This is Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka and National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah, who are leading the talks, have emphasized that they will consider the views presented by Kenyans and that the technical committee will go through every view presented.
Some, of course, are heavy. We have actually allowed the technical teams again to further unbundle, realign some of the issues that may not be in line with the express mandate of the committee.
Now, Kenya Party leader Martha Karua condemned the 6-month suspension of nominated Senator Gloria Oruoba from the Senate and Parliament. Oruoba was suspended following the adoption of a report by the Senate's Powers and Privileges Committee proposing the move after she failed to appear before it to defend herself against charges leveled against her. Among them were making unsubstantiated allegations that there were instances of pursuit of sexual favors in Parliament by posting messages on the Senate Business WhatsApp group. In a series of posts on X, Karua termed Oruoba's suspension manifestly unfair and excessive and described it as an attempt by the Senate to silence women who come forth to report cases of sexual assault. Men make up to 69.7% of the legislators in the current Senate. And 3 people were killed and 3 others were left nursing gunshot wounds in Murijo area of Samburu North in Samburu County only hours before the National Cohesion and Integration Commission held the national celebrations of the International Day of Peace in the area. NCIC and local leaders condemned the attack and called on the youth to abandon cattle rustling and seek alternative revenue streams. Local leaders, on their part, committed to preach and maintain peace among the warring communities. NCIC is also calling on leaders to support legislative efforts aimed at taming incitement to prevent banditry attacks even before they happen.
Tuambia kwamba mkitupatia njia ingine ya kupata ajira, sisi tutaacha mambo ya banditry na cattle rustling.
This celebration should not end here. We need to take it forward. We need to start thinking how best can we engage these young men in reasonable activities like self-employment.
Kutoka wajumbe, kutoka MCS, sisi wote wengine, sisi tumeamua kutembea njia ya amani.
Viongozi sisi tuko na jukumu ya kuhakikisha salama inaanza na sisi.
Kama mtu anauza marisasi hapa Baragoi, anyoroswe. Kama mtu anauza bunduki hapa Baragoi, anyoroswe.
There's a bill in parliament ya amendment ile itaweza kutupatia nguvu zaidi.
And leaders in Uasin Gishu County have supported the statement of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua denouncing statements of some senior government officials. The leaders, led by nominated Member of Parliament Joseph Wainaina, have said that the increase in fuel prices has affected the whole world and the leaders should carefully think through their utterances. Wainaina has also urged the people to be patient and give leaders a chance to discuss how to reduce the high cost of living.
Wengine wanaongea namna hiyo, lazima tuongeleshe viongozi au wananchi wetu kwa njia mzuri. Hata ikiwa ni maneno ya mafuta imepanda, lazima tuwe tunaongea na njia mzuri. Tunaelezea wananchi vile mambo tusiwe tunaongea mambo ingine inaweza haribu nchi. Tumetembea nchi mingi, si nchi hii yetu peke yake ndio imeongeza mafuta. Nchi ambayo inakuwa vitu huenda juu. Dunia iko na ukame, iko na climate change, lazima kuwe na mabadiliko. Rais wetu akitoka ng'ambo, tutakaa na yeye chini tuone maneno vile inaweza kuwa mzuri ya mafuta, lakini mjue haiwezi rudi sana chini. Kwa hivyo tuvumilie.
This is Newswire. Dennis Aseta, good morning.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
If a lion shows you its teeth, it doesn't mean it likes you.
It doesn't mean it likes you. It won't start. A liar calls as witness one who is either dead or far away. Say it in Kiswahili.
Ben low, nin inte, nin there, you markati kadikta. You know this character called liar. He has disturbed people. So when you tell him who are your witnesses, he will take you to a place where it is difficult to verify.
For someone like me who sweats a lot, I cannot survive there. Sweating is biblical. And he must blame it on Adam, not because Adam messed up and he was told, "No, you fellow, you, by the sweat of your brow, thou shalt eat."
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Okay, so it's a few minutes after 8 o'clock. We're still getting into it this morning. It's actually not too bad. We've seen some traffic coming off of the Eastern Bypass, in and outbound traffic, getting out towards that right junction and that intersection. You'll see some movement. And we're also seeing something coming out of Westlands, which can all be handled. The Thika Superhighway seems to be giving most of it right about now. Traffic coming out of Westlands. Everybody then comes together on Uhuru Highway that's getting out into the city, and the Haile Selassie junction is going to cause a little bit of traffic that's coming in from Gong Road going towards Haile Selassie, coming in from Kamkunji. So Friday morning is busy. It's moving in all directions, but we're not looking at any crazy holdups, at least not for now. Traffic hour seems to be flowing along just smoothly. Let's talk on Spice FM KE on X as we try to keep things moving as they are this Friday.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room. The only way to start.
It is 8 minutes after 8 o'clock. Good morning and welcome to the third hour of Kenya's biggest conversation. The Situation Room gets into that third hour, and we're having a political conversation after that health one. I don't know how you're going to see. We can somehow merge the two, right? Mental health issues, and then while looking into politics, many would say that one are the same. But all right, our audience is on KTN News and KTN Home with us. And as we continue those conversations, thank you. All right. Our guest for this hour is seated. The Secretary General of the Jubilee Party, Jeremiah Kioni, is here with us. And we're looking at shifts being made, or what could have been in mind the whole time then coming to the light. I guess he'll tell us that as we get into it. And before we welcome him properly, let's see if you will run, Mheshimiwa. The 29th of October marks the 20th edition of Kenya's largest single-day athletics event by way of the Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon. It's happening again this year, right? For the 20th time. It's a special one. And folks are saying, okay, so what do we do? Yes, well, you get to www.nairobimarathon.com. Simple. Then you see the different categories that you would want to run in. You look like a 42K man.
Yes.
You know, you can try that. There's a 21K, there's a 10K. There's the virtual run, so you don't have to have this pressure of the world looking at you. You can do it a week before. Really, there are options. 2,000 shillings, register with that. And then you could, if you decide to do the virtual run, you do it a week before, get your numbers on the leaderboard. Or if you decide to do the physical run, taking off on Uhuru Gardens that early Sunday morning, whichever one you try to do or decide to do, it's for a good cause. It's the Future Makers program, and it's making sure that young people, especially girls and people with disability, have the chance to learn, earn, and grow. So it goes towards that. Fantastic stuff. Because we ran, we can do it, I think.
I've tried it twice. It's a good thing to do.
Third time's a charm, they say. Could be this one.
At the very, very early times.
Yes.
You were among those pioneers. I think I did. Did I do 21 or 10?
See?
Whichever I did, I ended up almost in hospital, but it was nice.
It was for something good. This is right. Okay. So, as you know, you're not a stranger to this room, and CT welcomes us every morning with a proverb. This week, they're from Malawi.
Yes. This is our...
Does he ever have one from Kikuyu?
Yes, when Kenya we have them. And Mheshimiwa, now that you mentioned, let me just say that next week we'll be looking at proverbs from Kenya.
And he will say the ones in Kikuyu. That should be fun.
I will actually look for 2 proverbs from Kikuyu, especially from around the area you come from.
I'll give you 2. I'll give you 4. You pick 2.
All right, you'll give me 4. That is most welcome. Thank you. Now, our proverbs for the day. This is our final proverb. An upstart is a sparrow trying to marry a hornbill.
Imagine. As you're imagining, what does that mean to you?
Wow, that is almost blank. Trying to marry?
A sparrow.
A sparrow is the definition of an upstart.
Yes.
Okay, so you say when a sparrow tries to marry a hornbill, you know that's an upstart.
Yes.
Not keeping to his lane.
Yeah, you really are completely off.
Well, but then since this is a proverb, that's a question.
Yes.
Is it really off?
It might not be, but you never know.
If the hornbill does a thing for him, I mean, surely, can he not look? Can he also not want to marry the hornbill, surely? Just because he's a sparrow. Why limit himself?
You shouldn't. Is that what you see? You shouldn't limit yourself.
You shouldn't limit yourself. I am looking at it from a political point of view. And you should never limit yourself.
An upstart is the Kamwene leadership trying to remain relevant in today's politics. Well, okay. maybe that would be an opportunity for us to kick off into the conversation. And we did see you this week, a couple of days ago, making an announcement to the nation again about leadership taking on a different outlook. Kamwene leadership is now what we're calling it. What is happening now?
One is that I representing Jubilee, part of Azimio, and we are in Azimio, and Azimio is intact.
Still?
Very intact. And I'm sure it is more intact than many would want to believe or would be happy to hear. But having said that, Kamwene, yes, we talked about Kamwene this week, where I was the host at Jubilee this time loud. We have had many meetings, some at NAC Kenya, others will be the PNU, some in hotels and everywhere. And Kamwene is just a grouping of leaders from Mount Kenya region who would want to come together and think of issues that touch the mountain. Both politically, economically, socially, spiritually, all those issues, including the education life of our people. So we have been meeting and we'll continue meeting. We will have another meeting next week. In the coming couple of months, we will have delegates coming from the counties that we think have people showing interest. So, and just like any other region, it is important that issues of Mount Kenya also now looked at as from where we sit. We want to look at those issues more critically. I will tell you that even as you were meeting this week, I think later in the afternoon, a report was released. And Mount Kenya counties had the worst revenue collection record. In fact, many of them had a negative revenue collection. In fact, the last on the 47, just a minute, the last of the 47 was Laikipia, followed by Nyeri. And they all queued that way, occupying the first 14 places, but from behind. And those are issues that cannot be allowed to just, you can't wish them away. There must be a reason.
I'm puzzled. How do you get a negative collection? I mean, that's why you saw me interrupting you, because you said it and I'm alarmed. I'm saying, how do you achieve this?
It's a negative growth. For example, if a county had collected 200 million shillings last year, it ends up collecting like 20 million this year. So something is completely long. And what does that mean? It ties with what we had said earlier as Kamwene. The finance bill, among other issues. The finance bill that is still subject of a court process, but which is already being implemented by the government of the day or the regime of the day, impacted negatively on the businesses in that region. It may not be the one showing the reasons because it was just passed for this year. But measures that have been put in place by this KK regime have tended to hit the business community from those regions in a very negative way. If you go to, and if you understand, some of the things I am understanding more now as I continue interacting with people in the business world. I went to this Kirinyaga Gikomba area. And they have networks that go to Eldoret, they go to Nyeri, they go to Meru, they go to Embu. And all those networks are suffering. Why? Because the taxation measures that have been put in place have hit their sources at Gikomba because of the different ways of now how you import goods into the country, what you must meet, fulfill, conditions, all those things. When you come to issues like agriculture, this is a region that has always been known for perhaps its agricultural productivity. But look at something like coffee. You have seen people uprooting coffee. Last year, 2 years ago, they were doing a kilo at 120 shillings. Today, it's at 20 bob. Macadamia, which was a major industry. In fact, it was like the new liberation in the region. This regime comes into the play. They remove the restriction that was there for those who wanted to import it from Kenya. They allowed them to import without processing in the country, no value addition, and all the factories have now closed. I think the last one, Pius, is selling his 800 acres here in Thika.
Okay.
So the industry has collapsed.
All right.
And these issues are issues that we as leaders of the mountain must give a forum now for us to stop and talk loudly.
Okay.
I know you have a question, but just before, let me just say one final thing.
Okay.
It is there, you reported it. I think I heard it also from this wonderful station. William Ruto and his team, they go to Western Kenya and they are able to waive levies or outstanding payments of about 89 billion shillings for the sugarcane farmers, which is a good thing. We want the farmers of sugar to come back and earn a living. But when they come to Mount Kenya region, what do we see? Nothing. There is coffee corrupting, tea is corrupting. I talked to macadamia, but what do I get? A plate of rice and nyama. You know what I mean? These are things we must start talking about more candidly, without waiting for anybody to help us. And I tell you what I said also is that clearly people have moved from Muda, but they are not coming to Azimio.
Where are they going?
They are there, like the Israelites. And we cannot allow them to wander for 40 years.
Okay.
Quickly, we must give them direction.
Okay,
and
so
Kamwene is just one of the things that you'll be hearing. It is not meant for anybody. It's any person who thinks needs to bring, including businessmen. In our last meeting, we had some businessmen retired who came over and said it's true. We must start talking about our own issues.
So there are a number of things happening here. It's not the first time.
Yes.
It's not the first time that we've seen, I don't want to call it a faction, a number of people who've risen up and talked about the need to have Mount Kenya issues taken care of. Whether we were looking at an election period, whether we were looking at factors or elements being discussed within party, now we are looking and saying, with the current government still, that there are things happening within the mountain region that are not up to scratch, that are not adequate. So what you're saying is that whether you are in government, whether you're out of government, whether you're in whatever political party that you're in, Kamwene, which by the way incidentally means, what does it mean?
It means talking about your own issues.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Ni sisi kwanza tuongee yetu kabla ya kupeleka korokoro zetu kwa wengine.
All right. So you have an opportunity to join Kamwene to now come and discuss those issues. Okay. On to what end? What will you take now, these issues that are being discussed? On what platform or forum will you say now we need to now move forward? Or is it just a space for agitation?
One is that agitation is a very crucial thing in the kind of system we are. And agitation, if you take it to mean advocacy, it is important for you to advocate on behalf of the people who may be looking up upon you. Last night I was given a call by somebody who says, I have never called you, but niruhusu tu nikuambia shida yangu. Na akaendelea. And such a person, I don't know how many people call you also, but it is the government that should be helping those people. It's not me and you. We cannot be able. You can only lie. And you know, when you want to be a populist, you have some money stuck somewhere. So mtu anakuja unapatia tano, huyu unapatia. But that's not the way to do things. Today, as we sit here, how many young people, how many of our children are not in school because of the new education system? Charging fees, things that we don't understand. We were analyzing as Kamwene and we actually got figures using watu wamesoma mambo ya hesabu kuongeza na kutoa. The education cost has gone up by 225%.
Since when? Between when and when?
Since last year and now. 225%. People are being told, report to the university. You report. Yeah, there was some classifications. You vulnerable, needy, very needy, not needy. I don't know what all those things. And I don't know whether it's needy because you have not eaten enough. Whatever. You cannot quite tell the criteria that is being used. But you need to report so that you are then told what classification or what category you fall in.
Yes, and how much you will be helped.
And how much you'll be helped.
Yeah.
That kind of an uncertainty. How many parents want to send their kids off to school or places and they have no certainty? They are not certain whether it's something they're going to afford. I mean, there are things that are happening in this country. And I was telling my colleagues in Azimio that if we are not careful, even Kenyans themselves will go ahead of us. People are suffering and people are confused. So the same children, now there is a big campaign in Mount Kenya region. Funga bar, funga bar, funga bar. Na zimefungwa, lakini hakuna mtu ambaye anasifuga na barua. The person who is being told to close the bar has paid a license to the county government, all the statutory things. Lakini asubuhi wamekutwa na mtu na mwanasiasa, an MCA or a member of parliament in the presence of the other. Fugeni. Sawa, mwefunga. That person, what are you doing to that person? Yes, we don't want people drinking beer. But the way to stop drinking beer, it is not by closing bars. It is by giving people what is due to them. And that is why we are also saying at Kamwene, 1 shilling. We are saying 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling. Mm-hmm. And 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling does not mean that we are taking money from any other community. No. Give us money equal to the number of people in those regions, or something equivalent to the population. Then you will not see these young people drinking everywhere. We had kazi mitaani, kazi kwa vijana. Look at the embarrassment that we had as a country the other day here. Some 350 slots for NYS.
For a KDF.
Here at Ebakasi. And thousands and thousands of our young people turned up. That was a very embarrassing thing. And you and I know, maybe you may not want to read it as a proverb, but you and I know we can actually make one now for you to read next year. That by the time you are going for those slots, wenyewe wanajulikana, you are only going to help those who have already been allocated to continue taking them.
You're validating the process.
Yes, you are just validating what people have done. And I can tell you now, the TSC forms, something that was worked on very hard by Kibaki and Uhuru's regime. Let the recruitment of teachers be on merit. Let it not be because of who you know. A young lady who leaves college the other day comes and finds an old person who left college 2014. She is employed. The 214 person is waiting. That's what is happening. The forms are now available. Members of parliament are working with them to ditch them out to their villages. Honestly, that is what is happening. And if we do not talk about these things, this country, I am not sure you can see 4 years holding together.
So then again, the question is, Kamwene leadership, is this a position whereby folks can agitate? Or is there something that we are saying as a result will then be done for these issues that you're talking about? And how can folks be guaranteed that it is essentially not a grouping of individuals, politicians, who previously were in some limelight and are still looking for expediency today? How can we be sure?
There is no climb with the politicians who are in the limelight looking for an opportunity to be in the limelight. And one of the ways of being in the limelight is actually turning up to an invitation to Spice FM this morning. There is no climb in that. There is no claim of creating a platform where younger leaders in the region can be given a better platform where they can be better leaders. Leaders who take on platforms and don't insult others. Leaders who take on platform and don't tell you when you are really suffering because of the high cost of fuel. The leader who will not tell you, go and dig your own well in your own compound. That's not the leadership we are looking for. So Kamwene would also be a forum to nurture new leaders in Mount Kenya who can be able to articulate issues of the region without insulting other people from other communities. So it is a platform, yes, we will articulate all these issues, and I'm not saying that we will also be pushing for political leadership. Whether within Kamwene or from whichever other formations that are there, we will be pushing for political leadership. 2017 or 2022, it was a time when we did not have a political leader in the form of a presidential candidate from that mountain region. It doesn't mean that we are not going to have those opportunities coming through. If it comes through Kamwene, so be it. And this is nothing wrong in nurturing us to just issues that are affecting people. But we would want to advocate for them now and tomorrow, even when you are in the offices that others are occupying, for one reason or another. And I know there are many people who are saying many things, but I want to repeat now again, and it is clear. We moved into KK camp and we moved into Azimio camp. We are still saying open the servers, because there are those people who think that, like yesterday I had a guy called Hassan Omar saying, how many votes did you bring to Azimio? And I'm telling you, open the server.
And you can see.
Open the server. We took 1.6 million votes there. Zile waliiba. Open the server. So don't ask the question kama wewe mwenyewe umekataa kuleta ukweli wa mambo hili. And these are things we will never stop
saying. Is that where the friction came from yesterday? Is that what we're saying? Essentially, what happened yesterday?
There were many reasons as to why frictions will come. But that is also a good area for friction.
And so it still continues to be a pain point here that you're saying if you want to find out what really happened, then open up the server and then you'll get some answers. It seems like we're going to keep riding on that particular element for a while until it's done.
And it is very unfortunate because even before you are told to open the server, the law requires IEBC to do so. But they don't want to do it for the reasons that they have been trying to manipulate on to tank and tamper with it. And I'm sure those are issues that are going to come out in the coming days. But if you don't want me to say many things, or if you don't want to, just do the obvious. The server is not a secret thing. It is a thing that should be, as you bring the results on the screen in Bomas, come and see the server, where they're coming from. But that thing, they have refused completely. Why would you want to refuse with it?
Right. So the bipartisan talks became a shouting match yesterday. Essentially, that's what happened. And here we are still looking at fundamental issues that one would have thought would have been overcome now. One side from the bipartisan talks, now we see that within that side, Kamwene leadership is coming out of that. The other side, we're throwing things at each other. And the question is, how then will any solution come out of this if there seems to be so many pots boiling? You want to think about that as we go to a break?
Well, I have the answer. Not too much of thinking, but we can go for a break.
Okay, let's take a break and come back and we'll hear that the answer to that question. Secretary General of the Jubilee Party, Jeremiah Kioni, is our guest this hour. And we're looking at many things, the bipartisan talks. What's going to come out of them? Was there something intended from the beginning? Kamwene leadership also says they have some, room for agitation and it should be looked at. We'll take a break. We'll be back after this.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Revenge is for children. It's for kids. When you grow up, you realize the best revenge you can take on somebody is to ignore them.
Now, I'm just new in politics. It is not everybody's cup of tea. That's why some people come in one term and that's it for them.
Political parties in this country do not have ideologies, whether luring or otherwise.
And that is the effect of corruption.
Any time an offense occurs anywhere in the country, it is the job of the Inspector General to look into it. Whether it's corruption, whether it's murder, whether it's petty, that is his job.
If we have chosen to be a corrupt nation, then we produce corrupt leaders. Everything then becomes chaotic that you cannot be able to change a nation.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Sunny conditions at 16 in Nairobi. We'll see highs of 25 and lows of 14. It's sunny at 16, highs of 25 and lows of 13 in Nakuru, and mostly sunny at 17 in Nyeri, highs of 25, and 24 will be the high, and sunny Eldoret at 15. It's sunny at 26 in Mombasa, going to highs of 30, and we'll see highs of 30 as well in a sunny Malindi at 26, 22 and sunny in Kisumu, highs of 29, and 28 will be the high in a sunny Kakamega. It's 21 and partly sunny in Kampala, highs of 28, and 29 will be the high in a mostly sunny Dar es Salaam. at 26, 17 and sunny in Johannesburg with highs of 28, and it's mostly cloudy at 26 in Lagos, going to highs of 30 and lows of 25. We'll see highs of 32 in a mostly cloudy Kinshasa at 24, coming down to lows of 23.
Spice up your life.
All right, so still looking at traffic, most parts of the city, still Uhuru Highway will be the busiest right about now, with traffic coming in all the way from the Nyayo Stadium roundabout, heading out onto Uhuru Highway into the city, and it's giving also coming in from Bunyala Road at that roundabout, trying to connect with traffic that seems hopefully will be moving a little bit better as we get through it. Haile Selassie then at that junction coming from Gong Road and then heading out towards Kamkunji. In and outbound traffic is doing the thing there. On the Thika Superhighway, some movement as well as you're coming into Pangani. It's much better now on Kiambu Road. We're not going to have those issues, at least not for now. We're going to keep an eye on things and see how they evolve. Coming off of Waiakwe, a little bit of movement as well. It's moving, so not a problem. Let's keep it just so and talk in the meantime on Spice FM, KE on X.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Jeremiah Kioni is our guest this hour, and looking at the intrigues. It still continues, isn't it? Kamwene leadership coming up. You were thinking, okay, you had the answer before we went to break, Mweshimiwa, and what is that for you? Why are we still seeing this friction? We still seem to be going back to the same issue, and it's not being addressed.
You see, one is that I think is important to mention so that we don't put everybody into some question. The little friction that somebody will have reported is a friction because it's me who was being fought. And why I was being fought is because in the course of the week I asked a question: where is the cost of living? We are seated at Bomas, yes, and when we are still seated there, the price of fuel in the country is increased in a manner that is unbelievable. The cost of kerosene goes up by 33 shillings. We were supposed to bring the cost of living, we were supposed to lower the cost of living or to ameliorate the pain of living in Kenya when we got there. How is it that we are talking of borrowing of 890 billion shillings between April and June? And the high levels of taxation. We have not resolved the issue of the finance bill. And so when I said that out there, and I said I wouldn't want to sit in a situation, or I wouldn't want to feel like we are conning Kenyans. Yes, there are those who thought that that should not have been said. But I'm still saying it now, that what took us to Bomas, why people were killed, was the cost of living. Mm-hmm. That's why we had people doing maandamano. And I can tell you, if it was not for the pain of seeing dead bodies allowed, it was not, you are not going to talk right more out of this quickly. But the pain of seeing dead bodies, the pain of seeing the profiling of rules in that process, people being killed in Kisumu for purposes of killing the maandamano. That is why we said, for the sake of life, can we just sit and see whether we can make sense out of this? Because you don't want to come from maandamano and people are killed senselessly. So even when you are seated there and we are not talking about the brutality of the police force, the medical bills of the people who are injured, compensation to those whose children were killed. Those are issues that should worry any one of us. So instead of that, going on, somebody says, how much cooler did we bring? Open the server.
then you can get your answer.
Open the server, and you get all these answers. So I think I want to respect and say that good effort. I cannot say that there is anything we have to report for up to today, because I think we've been doing a lot of housekeeping and organizing everything. And today we are now having the stakeholders memorandums are going to be given. We have one that we have sent as Jubilee, and even some people there think that we should not present as Jubilee because we have a court case. I mean, we will sort out those issues, but it is important that we also put on the spot by the media. The media will need to put us on the spot. They have done it, and there are those who have the mandate to speak on behalf of the talks. I don't have the mandate. I am just a person sitting in the technical team. But after the technical team, you are a Kenyan, a leader, and people will be expecting to see something coming out of where you sit. So more question you can ask those who have the mandate to talk on behalf of us. I say as a Kenyan is that we have a huge responsibility to deal with the cost of living. Whatever else we deliver, it will not make sense to a person who is hungry. And two, and allow me humbly, if we want to deal with issues that are dealing with the Constitution, there are already things we cannot, that are beyond any of us. For example, if you want to amend the Constitution, how to amend the Constitution is provided for in the Constitution. You cannot come up with another Kichijio way. No, and we will be there to say there is a constitutional way of amending our Constitution, and there are issues you cannot touch unless you've gone to Kenyans through a referendum. So then we will be able to have been faithful as to the reasons why we will have picked to go and sit there. And I apologize.
No, you don't have to apologize. When you started talking, you said that a lot of people have left UDA, but they're not joining Azimio. And I just picked on that because a lot of Kenyans are disillusioned, absolutely disappointed.
Including me.
So I'm going to make reference to the leadership, which is you. So let me finish. So, there was the election loss for those who voted on the Azimio side. And there's the disappointment in the handling that was done. And therefore killing the dreams and aspirations of those who had supported Azimio. Then there were the supporters of UDA with all the promises that had been given. And a year down the line, we have another very disillusioned people who are feeling absolutely let down. So there we have a bunch of Kenyans, rightfully as you said, and they're sitting there. And I can tell you today, if you speak to some of them, they will not be asking you about the server. They will not be asking you about Kamwende, is it Kamwende? Or whichever other political outfit there is, because there's a general feeling that our politicians have generally let us down. And actually looking towards what is going to be next. Who is going to come and save us? Because clearly, the ones who are present right now are not hearing us. There's a total disconnect with our political leadership and the people. Totally. Yeah. And this, I'm telling you, I've now been interacting with a lot of young people. And the young people are the ones who make this country. There's a complete, total disconnect. So even when you speak of forming new formations, what is that? Where is that angle for the young people? Right now, whose concern is, I have no food.
Employment.
I have nothing to eat.
Yeah.
My dreams and aspirations have been crushed. My leaders don't love me. All of them. I don't feel loved. I'm in a country where I feel unappreciated. So even as the political leaders are looking for relevance, I just want to tell you, already you're doing poorly, as it is. And this is both those in government and those in opposition. Yeah. We have a formidable opposition in our parliament. Where are the shadow cabinets? Where are the solutions? Even if we're saying government, reduce the cost of fuel. Where are the solutions? Because there are people with brains everywhere. Yeah. Why don't we have an economic think tank that is, funded, say, by Azimio side, so that we can see real solutions, so that people can begin to feel that even in as much as we are calling out the government for not doing, that there are possible solutions somewhere. Where are those possible solutions? Or are we just trying to remain relevant by just making noise and calling out and calling out? So there's a lot of young people out there completely disillusioned. And they don't see leadership anywhere.
I want to agree with you in everything that you have said, because I belong to the class of people who are also very unhappy. I am not young, but I'm old, but also very unhappy. So the unhappiness is not just among the young people, it is also among even the aged, those who are much older than us. And I will tell you, unlike ever before, it is now very difficult for us to say that we are looking for young leaders to come and be in parliament. The parliament that we have is made up of the youth. It is the youth who are in parliament, and they have been really a disappointment. So, in many ways, including the kind of bills that you see them tabling, some of the very youthful senators are the ones who had gone with the bills in parliament to ask for a holiday. When what did they say? That if we have a holiday on a Thursday and a bill,
yes,
then Friday should become a holiday. That is how they are helping the youth. Some very myopic things are coming from those leaders who are youthful. So I'm saying this to try and ask of you to think of our problems as a Kenyan problem. It is not a problem that is going to be solved by the youth or the young. It is a problem that we have to solve, all of us. And it will not be solved by shifting blame anymore from one age group to the other, because that we have seen, and it's been very, very disappointing. When you talk about many of the things you talk, including why is there no opposition? There is opposition in Bunge. But the first thing that was done by UDA was to buy our young, youthful leaders from our parties so that they can join the wheelbarrow wagon. And that is why it is an issue that we would want to discuss at Bomas. But there is huge resistance from the young people, again, from the youth in UDA. They don't want us to talk about the multi-party, fidelity to multi-party. If the multi-party democracy is not functioning, expect the government to land shot on you. They will do anything and everything on earth. They need to be told, stop. The only reason the government was not able to push us to the levels they have pushed us now, last year, is because of the demonstrations. Now they know with the killings that they did, every one of us is hesitant to call people out for demonstration. Wait and see the havoc they are going to learn on this. They held us at Bomas, and we were having Bomas, and I told this to our leaders. These people are only being nice. That was last month. They are only being nice for the reason that they have heads of states
for this climate
coming for the climate summit. Immediately they are gone. Wait and see. The day the last one left the country, fuel hike hit the ceiling. So this, without opposition, the government will do anything and everything they think they should do on Kenyans. Unfortunately, it is parliament where you're talking of opposition. It is actually parliament that is the most unreliable institution that you can deal with. And when it has been captured, you can only now look for help from outside. If we had strength in parliament, we will not be forming Kamwene outside. We will be calling on the leaders within parliament and telling them what they need to push. But when they were called to Sagana from Mount Kenya region, when they were having the Muchere and Nyama story, there was the issue. We had told them to go and push for one man, one vote, 1 shilling. And they were told, if we ever hear any one of you utter those words again, you will not be anything anymore. They all went mum. And then there were some experts, and I say experts in that manner, were made to present papers to them, to tell them, this is something that cannot work. The one man, one vote, 1 shilling. It's not a Mount Kenya thing. It is a country. We want it as a principle for everybody in this country. Get your shilling for you as a voter.
Mweshima, why is this always an issue? This thing that we're talking about, the capture of parliament, did not start with this administration. We saw that there were words on the same in the previous administration, and it's always that parliament is beholden to the executive. It is always that members of parliament, who, by the way, went to the people in constituencies and said, vote for me as an individual, I will be able to carry your issues to the floor of the House, and I will agitate, and I will make sure that the issues are addressed, and I will make sure that development is secured 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Then we get into an administration, and very conveniently we are told, well, actually, that thing that I said I was going to do for you, whether I'm in government or opposition, I actually can't do because we have been captured. It seems to me too often to be an excuse that's used.
Yes, and I think it is the clarity of laws that needs to be understood. See, cleverly, in a very shrewd manner, the executive will always want. Our history is that before we got our 2010 constitution, development was going to areas that were were represented in the executive. You are a member of we are a member of government if you belong to the party that is in power.
Or you're friendly to them.
Or you are friendly. And friendliness was not quite working before, because during Kanu's days, you are our friend, yes, but you cannot be our friends unless you cross over. But during Kanu's day, and you know Kanu, how untidy Kanu was, at least they were decent. They would cause a by-election in your area. Go, run again, come at a Kanu. And people will say, sasa, wacha tupatie mtu ya Kanu, hata diwako ataenda kwa serikali. That now the people have given you a mandate.
You are talented development.
You are talented development.
Yes.
Now today, there is nothing. They are just the most dishonest political. In fact, it's political prostitution. You have lied to people out there that I am going to remain within the party of Jubilee or within ODM. But when you go to the floor, you abandon what you told the people and you go and align yourself to a party. This is how we have killed opposition. We started parliament with 172 members of parliament.
You had the majority.
We had the majority as Azimio. But before we could even sit, 11 had been stolen. They had been bought. Cash.
But
without any regard of any existing law. And this is why one of the key things that we'd want to get out of this bipartisan thing and bombers, hide it out, is the issue of multi-party, fidelity to multi-party democracy. If the executive cannot respect the multi-party doctrine, then you expect the suffering that we have.
Or at the very least, the independence of the
Not a single member of parliament has talked of the embarrassment that is there. I mean, it's so horrifying.
What this government does and what they're doing is clear. The rules that we speak of, they have demonstrated with clarity that they have no regards for them. Okay? Just like the previous government, Uhuru clearly demonstrated he had no regards for court rulings. Okay? So it looks like we are building on that particular platform. But why don't we consider the conversation that you're making with this perspective? These younger politicians of ours whom we say were bought, it appears they were willingly bought, or were some of them forced to be bought. You see, if somebody makes an offer and somebody accepts, there are those who argue some have been arm twisted. I am told there's some individuals who do a lot of business with the government, and unless you are friendly and you acquiesce, then whatever is owed to you by the government will not be paid, but not all of them. Some of them are hoping that they will do business, whatever the reasons. But I am simply saying that many of these people who appear to cross over while they were elected on this particular party ticket, on the other, seem to willingly go in that direction. Now, is there really a way of guaranteeing that when you develop new leaders, they will not go the same way?
That I'll answer it by what we have put and what we'll be presenting at Bomas.
Yes.
It was a very simple procedure before our 2010 constitution. You move from your party into Kanu, a by-election. And even Moi was prepared for by-election. He actually was announcing the date along the roads. Siku ya uchaguzi. He never took you over in your previous colors. That is the minimum that we can expect from this parliament. If we're able to achieve that, you'll also be able to nurture leaders because you've given them some protection. And you also have, there is a cost to you if you do X, Y, Z. So one would also be able to persevere if it's a business you want to lose. It will be lost, but you have been faithful to the people who elected you. So as we are looking at the bipartisan talks, and we'll be hoping that many people will come with those kind of proposals in their memorandums, is what aspects of the law do we need to amend or to deal with to ensure that if you propagate the ideals of another party, you go for by-election. If you think that the party that you were elected on is not serving the people, your people, you go back and tell them, I think this is the wrong party. I have come back with this party. Do you want to give me votes? That kind of fidelity, that kind of honesty, we hope to get out of it. It is, of course, possible even with the current laws that we have, but they are being abused by mainly the political parties tribunal. That is where the worst things are happening now. Because every time you like now what ODM has done, what we had done in Jubilee, you discipline a member. He is expected, of course, you have the due process, yes, fair hearing, fair administration of justice. So they have to go to the tribunal, file an appeal, they go back and forth, and that whole process is where 5 years is wasted. Kwa sababu wanasema hiyo mambo, I'll finish 5 years in these corridors, I'll still be in parliament, right. I'll still be achieving. So even now becomes more notorious because you have already expelled him, but you are not able to get him out of parliament. So he even spites you more and becomes of...
Are we saying then that the judiciary is also compromised?
Yes.
Okay.
I can tell you that, and we'll try and see how we can deal with this.
You're looking
but
at
the
all
judiciary
of these
is
talks.
Compromised, not in terms of perhaps, let me say, not in terms of because the judges themselves are not doing what needs to be done, but because for a case to be heard at the High Court, at the Court of Appeal, at the Supreme Court, what kind of time do we take?
So
can we then be able to limit the time within which that case must be dealt with?
Okay.
Those kind of things.
The talks
is
in
that
general.
kind of compromise I'm talking about.
So it seems
but
as
the tribunal is different.
It seems as though the talks in general, there is dissatisfaction across board. So why are we wasting time? In your opinion, should these talks continue? Or are there a platform for which Azimio can prepare for 2027?
Well, talks must continue because it's good to continue talking. And
even if it is not going to yield,
whenever an opportunity has been given for people to talk, you keep talking. But it's also good to be honest to people who are expecting you or who sent you there.
So,
and
so what are those expectations? Are you essentially saying that nothing is going to come out of them, even if it's
I haven't seen nothing will come out, but so far I haven't seen us deal with the cost of living. I haven't seen us deal with the issues of electoral justice in the manner that are we preserving. Even if I totally agree with you, it is not that we want the server to be open so that we can feed on whatever is there. It is because we want the server to be opened so that it will help us make amendments to our laws to ensure that what happened 2022, 2017, 2013, 2007, it does not happen 2027. If we do not start by seeing what happened, where is it that we've been going wrong for the last 20 years, there is no point of saying that we are coming up with a new electoral body.
Does it still present itself as a bedrock for preparation for succession for 2027?
I don't get exactly what you want me to say, but I'll say what I think you have triggered in my mind.
Okay.
Whether we like it or not, we must prepare for 2027. There are those who are preparing for 2032. You have heard them speak out there. So there will always be people preparing for the next general elections. What is important is to ensure that that process is fair. It gives you the honest outcome that was intended by the people. Where we are now, what we have learned is that we are not going to be able to, recommend changes either to the law, to the policy, to the process without starting from the server and coming backwards. Otherwise, we are going to have the same prescriptions because every 5 years we've had this kind of a game. Where is it that this system is not working? Open the server, we start from there.
You know, Mheshimiwa, everything that I've heard today tells me one thing. This is a matter that is dear to your heart, and it's something that you've given a lot of thought to.
Yes.
Yes, we've spoken to you on many occasions, and twice now, I've heard you speak with more energy and more verve than I've actually heard you speak. And on this one, you've put your foot on the gas pedal even a little more. We have 1 minute. Why is it so?
Because you have only that kind of an opportunity in life, a widow, to make a change. And I believe that we now have an opportunity to make a change in the electoral process in this country. Solve it once for all. 2, I believe that those of us who come from the mountain have an opportunity to sit now as a house and think hard as what does it mean in the coming days for this community. We also know now that mistakes made at the mountain can affect the whole country negatively. Tuliamuka mapema kupiga kura kwa hawa watu. Umeona vile na wakaambia watu wetu young people have been very honest. They were saying, hata we mheshimiwa, kama if you are the one who had been promised all these things, do,
what would you have done?
Now they have seen it's not working. So Kamwene is to try and harness this. We hope that something will come out of Bomas. It is important that the media keep us on check on what we promised people while we were going loud in the rallies.
Jeremiah Kioni, thank you so much for being here this morning. Asante sana.
Thank you
until we speak again.
Having me.
It's 8 a.m., 9 a.m.
Good morning. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. We are in Azimio and in it to stay. The Kamwene aspect is a meeting of leaders from Mount Kenya who will be focusing on addressing issues that specifically touch on the Mount Kenya region. This is according to Jubilee Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni, who says that they are concerned with the way things are ongoing in the mountain.
We are in Azimio, and Azimio is intact, very intact. And I'm sure it is more intact than many would want to believe or would be happy to hear. But having said that, Kamwene, yes, we talked about Kamwene this week, where I was the host at Jubilee this time loud. We have had many meetings. Some at NAC Kenya, others will be the PNU, some in hotels and everywhere. And Kamwene is just a grouping of readers from Mount Kenya region who would want to come together and think of issues that touch the mountain, both politically, economically, socially, spiritually, all those issues, including the education life of our people. So we have been meeting and we'll continue meeting. We will have another meeting next week.
It says that the Finance Bill, now the Finance Act, impacted negatively on businesses in the region, saying that the Kenya Kwanza and its decisions have affected the businesses in the region. He says that Kamwene is there to find a solution to problems bedeviling the region.
The Finance Bill that is still subject of a court process, but which is already being implemented by the government of the day or the regime of the day, impacted negatively on the businesses in that region. You have seen people uprooting coffee. Last year, 2 years ago, they were doing a kilo at 120 shillings. Today, it's at 20 bob. Macadamia, this regime comes into the play. They remove the restriction that was there for those who wanted to import it from Kenya. They allowed them to import without processing in the country, no value addition, and all the factories have now closed. William Ruto and his team, they go to Western Kenya and they are able to waive levies or outstanding payments of about 89 billion shillings for the sugarcane farmers, which is a good thing. But when they come to Mount Kenya region, what do we see? Nothing. There is coffee corrupting, tea is corrupting. I talked about macadamia, but what do I get? Plate of rice and nyama.
Now, with countries around the world expected to celebrate International Tourism Day on the 27th of this month, the Kisumu County Government, in collaboration with various stakeholders, have organized a 5-day event from the 23rd to 27th of this month to strengthen tourism activities in the county. Deputy Governor Matthews Owili says the celebrations, which has been named Kisumu Tourism Week, will also be used to motivate stakeholders in the sector on various sustainable tourism activities that equally protect the environment.
We want to emphasize the importance of promoting sustainable tourism development, preserving our natural environment. We also want to enhance the beauty of our beloved city. Throughout the week, There will be conferences and exhibitions from 23-27 September 2023 where you will gain valuable insights to explore innovative ways in integrating sustainability into our tourism industry's latest trends and innovations.
Willie also encouraged the residents of Kisumu County and Kenyans in general to come out and visit various places during the celebrations, adding that the events, apart from bringing people together, will also be educational. Kisumu City boasts of Lake Victoria, one of the tourist attractions. And leaders in Uasin Gishu County have supported the statement of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua denouncing the statements of some of senior government officials. The leaders, led by nominated Member of Parliament Joseph Wainaina, have said that the increase in fuel prices has affected the whole world and the leaders should be careful through their utterances. Wainaina has also urged the people to be patient and give the leaders a chance to discuss how to reduce the high cost of living.
Wengine wanaongea namna hiyo, lazima tuongeleshe viongozi au wananchi wetu kwa njia mzuri. Hata ikiwa ni maneno ya mafuta imepanda, lazima tuwe tunaongea na njia mzuri. Tunaelezea wananchi vile mambo iko. Tusiwe tunaongea mambo ingine inaweza haribu nchi. Tumetembea nchi mingi. Si nchi hii yetu peke yake ndio imeongeza mafuta. Nchi ambayo inakuwa vitu huenda juu. Dunia iko na ukame, iko na climate change, lazima kuwe na mabadiliko.
The Directorate of Criminal Investigations has released images of a woman believed to have been involved in the brutal murder of Nairobi Hospital Acting Finance Director Eric Maigo, who was stabbed 25 times on the morning of Friday, September 15, 2023. In the images captured by CCTV cameras, the unidentified woman is seen attempting to escape from the victim's residence at Woodley Annex Upper by scaling through the perimeter wall. According to the DCI, investigations have established that the woman left the house through the back door after the cold blood murder. The DCI is now urging you to volunteer any information that would help in identifying the suspect. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
Okay, so traffic still different parts of the city this morning, and we're looking that it will actually get a little bit crazy as we're looking at the Thika Superhighway right about now, getting away from traffic at about, into the traffic hour, about an hour or so left in that. We're looking at some movement then coming in from the Thika Superhighway. It's going to be crazy just at that Pangani underpass, but after that we should be fine. Coming out of Westlands, there's a little bit of movement as well. It'll take us through towards Chiromo, Haile Selassie, and then coming further beyond that is Uhuru Highway. From that Haile Selassie junction, busy traffic as you're getting into the CBD. As you come off of the Eastern Bypass, I think, but for now, we're fine with that. That was a little bit crazy earlier. We're likely to see that then settle down from now on out. Spice FM KE on X. Let's keep things moving this morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room. The only way.
All right, at 7 minutes after 9 o'clock, we're getting into the final hour of Kenya's biggest conversation for the week. And we're going to end all of this getting into a development conversation and asking ourselves the question, what actually must be done? Our guest for this hour is the Deputy Executive Director of UN Habitat, Michael Mlina, and he's with us already. He's already seated. And as we're getting into an urban development conversation, karibu sana to Kenya's biggest conversation. You're seated in the hot seat today. and incidentally with a hot topic. And so I guess the two will embrace one another, isn't it?
Asante sana, good morning, and thanks for the invitation.
Very happy to have you here. As is tradition, we'll welcome you, Kenya, welcome with a cup of tea. Coming to the Situation Room, we'll welcome you with an African proverb. And CT will do that this morning.
Our proverbs for the whole of this week have been from the Republic of Malawi. This morning's proverb is an interesting one. An upstart is a sparrow trying to marry a hornbill. The next question will be, what are your views? What do you think is the meaning of this proverb? What were the Malawians trying to tell us? That an upstart is a sparrow trying to marry a hornbill.
There is always a lot of wisdom in these proverbs. We do have a lot of them in my own country, in Slovakia.
Tell us one.
And, I often tell colleagues one that, of course, I was always reminded about by my grandmother. And it goes like this, that wise people learn from other people's mistakes, and I think it's a practical one. Of course, it's a different category.
Could you say it in Slovakian so that we understand?
Also, once you say it in Slovakian, it is sure to understand exactly what you're saying.
No, I want to hear. I've never heard the language. I want to hear the language and I want to hear what it sounds like.
Happy to do that. Múdri ľudia sa učia na chybách iných.
All right. So, of all those words, Silvia, why do you laugh?
You got what you wanted. Yeah?
I got what I wanted.
I'm sure it helped, right?
It helped tremendously. I now know.
But interestingly enough,
from the mistakes
there are a lot of Slovak words that sound like Swahili.
Yes.
At least chai, kahawa. When I was having coffee with my colleagues this morning, and for some reason I used the Slovak word kawa, they were surprised that we use the same. So, and there is a Czech word which you may be familiar with the word robot. Which actually is of Czech origin, because it was first used, R-O-B-O-T, was first used by a famous Czech writer, Karel Čapek.
Yes.
And then it made its way to all world languages, including English and others.
Interesting.
Well, it's a former linguist in me speaking. I used to be a mwalimu, a teacher of English and Russian back home in Slovakia, and then I joined the foreign service.
Well, you're in good company. I myself was a teacher of the English language once. Yes, and I have to keep correcting people, and they say, "Oh, you were an English teacher." I said, "No. I am a teacher. I was a teacher of the English language. I was not an English teacher."
Because you're not English, you're Kenyan.
Because I'm not English, I'm Kenyan.
Okay. The building blocks for language, maybe we could liken those to the building blocks for life, societies, communities. And you serving here at UN Habitat, maybe just give us a little bit of insight as we jump into this conversation about urban development. What is the role and mandate of the United Nations Habitat Program?
Thanks very much for having me again. I started at UN Habitat in April, as you mentioned, as Deputy Executive Director, but I'm not new to Kenya. I served in your beautiful country as Ambassador of Slovakia. Balozi was Slovakia pa Kenya from 2012 to 2015. So it's great to be back and see how the country has evolved. It's been 8 years in between. But indeed, as you said, building blocks is a good bridge between even my teaching profession and the current work at UN Habitat, focused on sustainable cities, sustainable urban development, housing, and other related issues. It's largely a governance context that I would like to highlight. Of course, UN Habitat as the UN agency which is headquartered in Nairobi together with UNEP, that is responsible for sustainable cities and sustainable urban development, the new urban agenda, which is our blueprint, and linkages to so many other issues, is in fact the bridge builder between other areas of development and urbanization or cities. And there is a lot of challenges, as we all know. It's enough just to maybe look out of the window and see how the urban environment around us is developing. The key thing, of course, is how we manage urbanization, how we manage our cities through multi-level governance, and very importantly, and that's UN Habitat's bread and butter, how we plan, how we know what we are going to do, not today, but tomorrow and beyond, and what are the trends that, of course, we have to keep track of. The trends related to energy, to water, sanitation, to access to education, health, and other issues. I often say that SDG 11, which is the SDG that we are custodians of for sustainable cities, is probably the most cross-cutting one. Because it touches really so many other areas, climate, but also health, education, partnerships, and many other issues.
When one hears of UN Habitat, one thinks of habitation. Now, habitations exist within a certain ecosystem that has to do with planning and determining. Now, again, when one hears of habitat, one hears of habitat being involved in matters to do with informal settlements, not upgrading, but simply ensuring that those habitations have the dignity and have the sort of wherewithal that what would be considered humanly acceptable. My question, does UN Habitat also work with development planners or urban planners within countries to ensure that what actually requires to be done, the structure that is needed for these things to happen, is actually in place? I'll explain to you what I mean. For instance, our colleague here is a planner. She's an architect and a planner. When one looks at a city such as this one, and we look at our constitution, this very city that we call Nairobi could be divided not just into boroughs, but probably other cities, Nairobi as itself. And those could then be subdivided further into boroughs, so that the very development that is required or that we see right now is cascaded in its totality to these small units. Because if you look at this entity as it is, you could argue that what we currently have cannot actually manage Nairobi, because they cannot claim to understand what happens in those remote places. Now, my question, what is the role of UN Habitat when it comes to matters such as this?
Thanks very much. Do you want to work for us? Because you sound like a PR person that we could use on our team, and of course we are focusing on the PR aspects a lot. Communication is key. You hit the nail on its head, as we say. Indeed, the name Habitat or UN Habitat was chosen already back in 1976, when the first conference, Habitat 1, was held in Vancouver, Canada, when for the first time leaders realized that there is challenges in the area of urban development, but also in the area of how we manage and govern not only our cities but all human settlements, because the official name of UN Habitat is United Nations Human Settlements Program. So of course we focus a lot on cities because this is where the challenges are. Urban areas also outside of proper cities, but on all sorts of human settlements as well. We definitely leave no one and no place behind, as we say also in the context of the 2030 agenda. And at the very heart of that same concept is the concept of home. Because I think this is where the conversation should be starting. Adequate home for every human being is not any luxury. It's not even a necessity, it's a human right. When any mother brings her baby for the first time home, this is how any life starts, and adequate home, adequate conditions of any home are absolutely crucial for any human being, for any family, any municipality, any country, and that's why this work is so crucial. Indeed, the planning part is, as I said, our bread and butter. We are really proud of the planning and designing excellence and expertise that we have within UN Habitat, and we engage with countries, with member states, with municipalities, regional governments, and other partners on the same. We don't actually do, as some people may wrongly think, we don't actually build the roads or procure any infrastructure projects, but we are there to advise all levels of governments and other partners on how to plan and design properly, not for today, but ideally for tomorrow. And of course, we need to do it also compared to the past in a sustainable and in a green way. And this is exactly the direction that we are moving into. So, of course, as I already said, our work is often about access, not only to proper house, but so many other things that are related to that. So we often speak of our agenda as the access agenda, and that's why we have this blueprint that we call New Urban Agenda that was adopted at the Habitat 3 conference in Quito, Ecuador in 2016.
So when you look at human settlements and you look at even SDG 11 and asking that this be fulfilled, usually the responsibility is on governments. And if we look at governments in this geographical area, a lot of times the burden of care is across board. There's a lot on the plate at the same time. But we're saying at the very minimum, there's certain things that must happen in order for people to live dignified in a particular settlement. What would you say at this time is the ratio of those who are living in these dignified settlements vis-a-vis those who are not, as kind of like a pointer as to where we ought to be going as per advice?
Great. No, this is exactly at the center of our attention on a daily basis, globally, regionally, nationally. Indeed, the conversation starts with national governments, but then it continues with the local and regional governments, but also with private sector, with community organizations, with the civil society, with the the academia, with professional organizations such as architects. I had the privilege of representing UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres at the recent International Union of Architects Congress in Copenhagen, and that conversation was really amazing in all these different areas. So we at UN Habitat, we take pride at engaging all the relevant stakeholders, and actually we have been doing ever since our inception in the 70s. It was not so fashionable at that time like it is now. We have over the years developed really strong connections and strong partnerships to all those. Indeed, challenges are enormous, but we have to see also opportunities in those challenges, and I will talk about those a bit later. But you asked how large those challenges are. And indeed, only when it comes to housing, we estimate that by 2030, 3 billion people, which is about 40% of the world's population, will need access to adequate housing. In other terms, there is a deficit or a demand for 96,000 new affordable and accessible housing units every day. So, this is the magnitude of the challenge that we are facing. Kenya itself, as you know, probably needs about 250,000 new housing units a year. And currently it gets about 50,000. So there is still about 80% that needs to be addressed. And as you know, this has been one of the key priorities of the government of President Ruto. And we are working very closely also with the government of Kenya, but also with the governors and other stakeholders on the same. On addressing the gap, and part of the conversation, as I already said, is to look at this issue not as luxury or potentially as a market value, but primarily as a human right. Or as a necessity that needs to be addressed. So of course we need to have the private sector part of the same conversation, and the investment that can be made primarily by the private sector, but also by national and local governments are crucial. But there is more than that. We need to create access for our cities, for example, to be able to make those investments. We need to improve access to financing that they will need, and of course there is a lot of other issues. We need to make progress in these areas because it will, if we don't, it will continue haunting us. But as I said, there are opportunities because through these types of investments into not any infrastructure but housing infrastructure in particular, we can boost job opportunities. We can boost so many other areas of economies, especially for the young people. We need to make them part of the conversation and of the solution. Because, in fact, 70 to 80% of a global GDP actually is generated in urban areas. Yes, also 70% of global carbon emissions, unfortunately, is generated in the urban areas, which is yet another challenge. But let's grab the challenges at their horns and focus on how to address them. And we see that solutions are possible and that they can happen. We support, by the way, the government of Kenya a lot in developing its housing urban policies in general. Recently, Kenya National Urban Forum was held in Nakuru. And we supported those efforts a lot. There is a lot of work going in that particular direction, but also supporting Kenya youth. Just 2 days ago on Wednesday, I visited our project in the Mathare slum of Nairobi, and it was an important lesson for me in many ways, and I was really so proud that we have been able to address some of the most challenging issues there in a small scale. But of course, many of those things can be replicated. But it's also a bit of a reality check.
Right.
Balozi, I have 2 questions for you. I don't know if we have time before the break. The second UN Habitat Assembly happened here in Nairobi. It was a very robust, function. I think I was privileged to attend 1 or 2 of the conversations. I think it would be good if our listeners, if I don't know if this conversation has happened at the time when that assembly was happening, maybe we can understand what is the assembly, and from the resolutions that were made, what can we expect maybe for Nairobi, Nakuru, Kisumu, and we have a new city that is probably coming up. I think Eldoret is in the way for confinement, so we have 4 cities. So maybe that's my first question. And my second question is about the urban-rural. I'm curious to know if there are conversations about the urban-rural, because in a country like ours, majority of our population is in the rural. And access to services in the rural is really a challenge, especially if you come down to the counties in the lower eastern and the northern region where they are big and they are vast. So you find settlements are all over the place. And really a genuine conversation needs to happen such that, yes, urbanization is the way to give services in line, with the SDGs. So there's probably a shift in land policy that may be required, saying the advisory that you're giving. Are we looking at how to better organize our rural areas for service provision so that, we can achieve the sustainable goals as they are envisioned?
Great. Thanks very much for those extremely relevant questions. First, on our second UN Habitat Assembly, indeed, it took place in Nairobi in June. And that's actually, by the way, part of the reason why I started my new mandate as Deputy Executive Director of UN Habitat already in April, because my boss, Executive Director Maimuna Mokhtarif, was really making sure that I arrived in time before the assembly, so that we boost our capacities and together we can deliver. I before served for 6 years as ambassador of Slovakia to the UN in New York, and it was not easy to wrap up everything in New York and rush back to Nairobi, but we made it in time, and we are proud to say that the assembly was truly a success. We managed to steer the debates and the work in a reasonable way forward. And 10 substantive resolutions were adopted during the assembly, in addition to a ministerial declaration. We were joined by delegations from 135 member states out of 193 that there are total. And we had around 5,000 delegates at our second assembly. So very important. But your question was about what practical impact the resolutions will have. And indeed, that needs to be at the heart of our attention. It's not just a box-ticking exercise or statistics that we are looking at. On the contrary, it's really about the impact that we can make for the people we serve. That really is at the heart of our attention.
Well, if we can take a break on that note and come back right after this and look at some of those in detail, so we don't have to break on that for that to flow smoothly. It's 28 minutes to 10 o'clock, and we're having a conversation about urban development and why it must be prioritized. Deputy Executive Director of UN Habitat, Michael Milana, is here with us this morning. Conversations continue right after this.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
It's critical that people pay taxes. But then taxation has to have a limit. When you start overtaxing people beyond certain limit, then this is now we call robbery with violence.
We are all struggling, but we don't show. If you're not doing well, shame on you. But you have to say, I'm broke and I'm struggling. We are not okay until everybody is okay.
We are pretending to have political parties. Why don't we just be honest? And we say, these are the Luyas, these are the Kambas, these are the Kikuyus, and we find ourselves in Kenya.
You know, with politics and leadership, no matter what you do, there will always be a complaint. There will always be the assumption that you're either stealing or you're not doing things right. As a leader, don't fear. If you know you're doing the right thing, you've thought about it, you've got an expert advice, do it, then understand later.
This country, we don't need prayers. Prayers is between you and God. Good governance and thinkers who care about the country.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
26 minutes to 10 o'clock, getting into the last 26 minutes of this conversation. Our guest this hour is Michael Milana, and he is the Deputy Executive Director of UN Habitat. Before we went to break, and of course, welcome to our audiences on KTN News right now. Before we went to break, we're looking at some of those objectives that were realized in terms of goals, where we should be going with the whole urban development question, and you were going on to some of those.
Thanks very much. Indeed, the resolutions that we adopted at our second UN Habitat Assembly in June focused on some absolutely critical issues such as housing, people-centered smart cities, informal settlements, biodiversity, climate resilience, but to mention some of the most important ones. And also an important enabler, as we call it, and that is localization of SDGs, of all SDGs, not only of SDG 11, because really practice and life has shown us that if we want to not only accelerate but improve on the implementation of all SDGs, the 2030 agenda, we need to bring them down to the local level, which is a key message that also resonated during the Assembly, and where UN Habitat has been playing a strong role within the whole UN system, because there is the so-called Local 2030 Coalition within the UN, which is co-chaired on a permanent basis by UN Habitat, and then there is always another UN agency that is the second rotating co-chair. But on practical terms, for example, in terms of informal settlements or slums, if you will, slums are a housing issue.
Yep.
And of course, also a governing issue. It is obvious that when we see that the slum challenges persist and that we cannot fix the problem. Not only in Kenya, they exist in other parts of Africa, but in other parts of the world as well. And by the way, there are also linkages to homelessness, which is a challenging phenomenon also for many developed countries. So, all these issues really need to be addressed as part of our housing policies. And if housing policies fail, then we continue facing the slum issue. That's just one example. In relation to people-centered smart cities, Kenya, in fact, has so much to offer on some of the urban innovations, if you will, or some of the digital solutions that constitute what we call smart cities. UN Habitat will now be developing, on the basis of the resolution that was adopted, international guidelines for people-centered smart cities. And we hope that those will be very useful not only for the national governments, but also for local and regional authorities that can take advantage. And these efforts serve in many cases as a boost to the governors, the mayors, that can have better access to financing, to investment, and through partnerships with different stakeholders, they can advance. We give them, additional tools at their disposal. We work very closely with many mayors and governors organizations, including one which is called United Cities and Local Governments, which is a global association of local and regional governments, and it is through them that we are able to advise on these important things. And in fact, UN is preparing for September of 2024 the Summit of the Future. You may have noticed that just earlier this week, UN concluded in New York the SDG Summit, where UN Habitat was in charge of one of the 12 high-impact initiatives precisely on localization of SDGs. But we are already working further, preparing for the Summit of the Future, and as an absolutely central component of the Summit of the Future will be how to involve the local and regional governments in our multilateral discussions more. If we need a reminder, I would say that we have seen during the pandemic how important the role of the local and regional authorities was in addressing the challenges, and in particular in delivering the services to the people. Let's be honest, the national governments in Europe, also in my own country, Slovakia, are not particularly good at delivering the services to the people on the local level. They are there primarily to provide financing, to ensure that there are proper legal frameworks, but these things are not really happening without local and regional governments. And this is often the missing piece that we are trying to elevate.
Every time we talk about planning, we talk about urban planning, and we talk about settlements in urban areas, and then we look at the very rapid growth of what we refer to as unplanned settlements, the need for what you're saying becomes very apparent. It becomes something that you realize is not just apparent, it's crucial. However, there is this disconnect between what is intended, what is hoped will be done, and what actually gets done. There'll be conferences, there'll be understandings, there'll be MOUs, and people will know what ought to be done. But yet, let me talk of Nairobi, for instance. It's like a conversation that has a life of its own. It's what seems to take place, many conversations on this subject. Is there a way in which UN Habitat, in the advisory role, can influence the implementation of the things that are actually discussed and agreed on at international forums and even at local forums?
Yeah, again, I have to say that you are hitting the nail on its head, because one of the messages that resonated most during the assembly was implementation. So, of course, none of the policies, none of the resolutions are worth anything without implementation. And we do track implementation. We do remind national governments and other actors about implementation gaps or areas where we need to accelerate. And that's exactly why also our SDG 11 report that we presented just this July in New York was so important, because it contained all that. It contained tracking mechanisms. It contained data that shows how we are progressing on the implementation. And there are certain indicators where we have made good progress, and there are unfortunately areas where progress is lacking, or where we simply cannot say that we have been able to do enough. Yes, the pandemic has derailed us. There are other serious global challenges, but despite all that, we have committed to accelerating everything between now and 2030. I can tell you an example. I mentioned the Nairobi Rivers project that UN Habitat is working with the government and other stakeholders in Kenya on. I personally was attending one of the meetings and consultations that were held at the State House, and the conversation was very practical, very focused and to the point. President was asking key questions, and of course there were representatives of the Nairobi Rivers Commission, line ministries, counties and others. And when I took the floor on behalf of UN Habitat, I really had a few areas where we provided our advice on how to fine-tune the planning part and how to accelerate and fast-track important components. One of them being the slums, the housing issue. Of course, you cannot, address or improve the situation of the Nairobi rivers without also addressing the informal settlements, waste management, and other related issues.
Okay, so I mean, I think about this and I say, okay, well, this is advice, across board, and we're saying across the world, let us at least have a very bare minimum, this kind of model, right? And I think about architects and how they have a model of a building before they start to go towards it. So is there a model that countries should follow? Should say, even as we are prioritizing urban development, at the barest minimum, this is what governments should be striving for in urban areas. What are we saying? That there should be a basic source of water, that there should be at least basic, dignified living. What exactly are we saying that this is the very basic minimum that we should aspire to and pull resources, implementation, expertise together to get that done?
Yeah, exactly. You are right. There is, of course, no one size fits all because conditions are different, and we do publish reports, advice, and a lot of documents that we make available to our partners. We have the so-called Urban Lab, which is kind of our center of excellence, which, by the way, we want to upgrade and turn it into a real-life center where people, students, architects, academicians, governors, mayors would be able to come and to work with our experts firsthand and be able to potentially simulate some developments or take inspiration from what has already been done in other places. This is what we promote: the partnerships, the experience sharing, and of course, for any given situation, we are able to give specific advice. And as I said, we want to upgrade the urban lab and make it even more useful and practical. I would like to mention that October for us is what we call Urban October.
Okay.
It's the month of the year where we try to do these awareness-raising campaigns and where we promote sustainable solutions, in particular for our cities, but not only for our cities. And you have kindly mentioned the urban-rural nexus, which I can come back to if there is time. So the first Monday of October, 2nd of October, we have the World Habitat Day.
Mm-hmm.
And the last day of October, 31st of October, is World Cities Day. And of course, throughout the month of October, we will be doing exactly that, engaging, publishing information, inviting our partners to further conversations with us, going to universities and other places. I can also add that actually the World Habitat Day globally will be celebrated on the 2nd of October in Baku, Azerbaijan, that this year has been given that privilege. And the World Cities Day at the end of October will be celebrated in Üsküdar, Istanbul, Turkey. So, this is the global celebrations that we are preparing. On urban, rural, this is really at the absolute center of our everyday work. Sometimes there is maybe a misperception, and I have heard it from colleagues or from various stakeholders, that we are kind of quote unquote dragging people from rural areas,
bringing
into
them
cities.
to the urban. Yes,
and of course that's not the case. As you said, the need there is how to ensure that proper municipal services are provided, basic services are provided to our people wherever they live, whether they are in the cities or in the country, and we do need people to live in the villages. They of course need to continue working on their farms and doing other jobs that are not necessarily located in the cities, but that's the question, and we are indeed also providing our advice in that particular direction, how to improve the basic services in any given places. And of course, that's also part of the contribution of ensuring that we can keep the rapid urbanization under control, and that it doesn't spin in a pace that is difficult to keep under control. Yeah.
Do you also work and collaborate with financial institutions, local and international? I ask because everything we're talking about here involves money.
Yeah, absolutely. Without the financing, it's a nice
discussion point. Yes,
I should repeat our 3 priorities and 2 enablers. Priorities are housing, climate, and urban crisis, and the 2 enablers are localization and financing. So, of course, that captures well, I think, that focus. Indeed, we do work with partners, including with the IFIs, the international financial institutions. In fact, on Monday, I will be meeting with the Vice President of the World Bank for Sustainable Development in Washington, D.C., because we are rebuilding our strong partnership with the World Bank in particular. Earlier in July, I was in Paris at the OECD. OECD is yet another important partner for us in terms of ensuring that we design proper solutions that are implementable and that can be financed. Also, after New York and Washington D.C., I will be in Malaga, Spain, for an important meeting of UNCDF, which is focused on providing financing not only to the national governments but directly to our cities, and creating mechanisms that will improve access of our cities to funding, of course from different sources, because we live in the world where we can no longer rely only on one source of financing. We have to diversify, and we have to create conditions for the right mix. Of course, public-private partnerships are crucial, and all that. We have methodologies and practical solutions that we are offering to our partners on all these issues.
Where do we see that sustainable cities, sustainable communities are actually practicing this advice? Where do we see that strides are being made to get to those objectives? And we can look in Africa, for example.
Yeah, indeed. It's of course made available through different channels on social media, on websites. But many of these global and regional fora are going in the same direction. I mentioned the National Urban Fora, which are a particular vehicle that we use, but we also promote organization of regional urban fora for sub-regions. And we are working closely with African sub-regional organizations, ECOWAS, East African Community, but also with the African Union itself to boost the same, to ensure that best practices can be shared and that we create platforms for not just for discussions but for the experience sharing. Our primary or probably better to say in the English language, my dear colleague, right? Prime platform for doing the same is our World Urban Forum. We organize World Urban Forum once every 2 years. The previous one was held in Katowice, Poland in 2022. Next one is coming back to Africa. It will be for the second time coming back to Africa. The 12th World Urban Forum will take place in November of 2024 in Cairo, in Egypt, and it will be for the first time in a mega city. So we, of course, have high expectations. We are working very hard to prepare this 12th World Urban Forum. Usually we have around 30,000 participants, including youth and other stakeholders. And of course, many of the sessions will now be virtual or hybrid. So, in addition to around 30,000 in-person participants, we will be reaching out also to others who will be able to follow the discussions online. It's not the same because obviously you have to, it's better to be there to engage in these direct exchanges. We have some real champions, including in Kenya and in other African countries, mayors and governors. Madam Mayor of Banjul in the Gambia is one of the best advocates that you can wish for in terms of sustainable urban development. I will not mention Kenyans because I don't want to mention one and leave out somebody else. So I think it would be wiser to mention others that work with us a lot. Mayors of Paris, London, New York, just to obviously mention some of the largest places, but a lot of smaller or what we call intermediary cities, like the mayor of Braga in Portugal, and others where we really can rely on strong support. So it's not only about capital cities or big ones,
Yeah, Balozi, I want to ask a question. I can see time is really flying. Just make a comment on disaster preparedness as part of resilience, and in the face of adverse climate change issues. We saw Libya, what happened in Libya, and this is Nairobi
and Morocco,
and there's also Morocco as well.
Yes.
And Nairobi, we dread when the rains start in Nairobi because the city practically comes to a standstill. Not to mention how our slum areas, poor facilitation, in terms of disaster preparedness. Maybe you can tell us conversations around this, resolutions around this.
Absolutely. Crucial. And I did mention that urban crisis, urban resilience is one of our 3 priority areas. We work hard, including in Kenya on the same. You mentioned Morocco, Libya recently, but we have supported a lot in this area recently, Mozambique, Malawi. We work in the Sahel in the same context. That's just in the African continent. There is a lot more. Just 2 days ago, I chaired a conversation that we had within UN Habitat to see how to better scale our engagement in the humanitarian field and in urban resilience and crisis. Solutions are obvious. We have to design such policies that take into account the disaster preparedness, meaning prevention measures and mitigation. Of course, a lot of that is related to climate change.
Yes.
So resilience and climate change are siblings that we have to address together. So yes, there is a lot already happening, and there will be more. And in fact, I can even add, even though it has not been officially announced yet, that early next year, we as UN Habitat will be hosting representatives of all UN humanitarian agencies for this conversation. We have agreed with the Office of Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs from New York that we will bring the next conversation to Nairobi to focus on the same.
That will be fantastic to see. Mikhail Milar, thank you so much for being here with us. I mean, time goes quickly, and very important conversations that we're having here. And as you go to New York, as the UNGA talks, take place, it'll be just interesting to see that some of these objectives again brought to the fore. Thanks for being our guest this hour on Kenya's Biggest Conversation. And as we wrap up the week, Sylvia Kasanga, we thank you also for hosting with us this morning. It's great to have you.
I enjoyed myself. And the time really does fly.
Indeed it does.
I believe it's 4 hours already.
And just like that, a week is over. Monday morning finds us doing this once again. Have a wonderful weekend as you go into it, and keep it Spice FM. Asante Sana. It's 10 o'clock.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto.